Good afternoon, everyone. Today is February 7th, 2024. Welcome to the hearings for the Ways and Means Committee. The first bill that I will call is House Bill 558, and it is my bill. So Madam Vice Chair is going to take over. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We will call up her panel: Lisa Jordan, William O'Donnell, Lee Blinder, Christine Crone. And then we do also have some favorables that are virtual, so we'll do those after. You can begin whenever you're ready, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Just get 1 second. Look like I have a lot of stuff here. Okay, good afternoon. Good afternoon, committee. Good afternoon, committee. Thank you. I am Delegate Vanessa Atterbury, and I am here to ask for your favorable report on House Bill 558. Some of you will remember this from last session as House Bill 119, and I want to thank you all who were here last session that we did pass this successfully out of this committee. So, the Maryland State Department of Education adopted regulations and updated the Maryland Comprehensive Health Framework in 2020. At that time, every jurisdiction gave input into that health curriculum. The health curriculum framework includes a variety of topics that affects our students' health that are ages K through 12. And the health framework is very specific and says that that content has to be age appropriate. Unfortunately, what we have seen over the past couple of years is a particular jurisdiction. I will have to say most jurisdictions are in compliance, but a particular jurisdiction not following the health framework. And in particular, the piece that calls for sexual education and education related to gender identity and striking that out of their curriculum. And in fact, their school board, in fact, voted on that. I am here because, as I'm sure most of you know, I spent 7 years on the Judiciary Committee where I really fought for children. And that is why I was elected to office. I am first and foremost a mother, and I am here in this General Assembly to represent all of the children in our state. And it is my job to fight for them to feel safe and included in our schools. I firmly, firmly believe that. So with that being said, this bill simply would take the health framework and put it into statute so that all jurisdictions are required to come up with a framework. And the topics, there's a variety of topics. They include health promotion, mental and emotional health, substance abuse prevention, family life and human sexuality, gender identity and sexual orientation, safety and violence prevention, healthy eating, and disease prevention and control. And hopefully, I think the one thing that we all can agree on is that we do not want our students learning these things on TikTok, on Instagram, on Snapchat, on things that I probably have never even heard of, and most of you probably haven't heard of either. And there is a provision when it comes to the family life and human sexuality portion of the framework. So that currently, this is what should be happening currently, and I put it into the statute. If a parent or guardian does not want their child to participate in the family life and human sexuality or gender identity and sexual orientation topics, then they can opt out. You all know that I have 3 lovely, lovely children that drive me crazy sometimes. And my oldest is in 6th grade, and I got an email saying your child, they only have health actually in Howard County one quarter. And it got an email and said, your child is about to learn about these topics. And it specified these things. And it said, if you want to opt out, let us know, and we will provide them with an alternative, appropriate education. And so with that, I would ask this committee's favorable report on House Bill 558, and I will now turn it over to my panel. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, Madam Vice Chair, members of the committee. I'm Lisa Jordan with the Maryland Coalition Against Sexual Assault. We're here in strong support of House Bill 558. Thank you, Madam Chair, for your continued advocacy for children. I believe you know that I spend most of my time in the Judiciary Committee and worked with Delegate Atterbury there, where she really is a tenacious advocate and clearly continues to be. Thank you to this committee for passing the bill last year. The Maryland Coalition Against Sexual Assault, we're the coalition of all of the rape crisis centers across the state of Maryland. We are the coalition of the prosecutors, the counselors, the people who are working with kids and adults who have been sexually assaulted. And the reason we feel so strongly about this bill and are so supportive of this bill is because this bill will help prevent sexual assault. This bill will help prevent sexual abuse. The requirement that you teach children about family life, about human sexuality, about their gender identity, sexual orientation, safety, family violence prevention, all of this is needed. You cannot stop sexual violence unless you teach children about healthy relationships. It is hugely important. And this idea that teaching kids about healthy relationships is somehow, someone in the hallway told me that, oh, we're teaching kids how to perform oral sex. That's ridiculous. I would not be here at this table supporting this bill if that were true. This is a bill that will help protect our children. Thank you for passing it before. It's vital that you pass it again. We can't leave some kids out just because of where they live. So for those reasons, we ask for a favorable report on House Bill 558.
Good afternoon of the committee. My name is Christine Crone, and I'm here on behalf of MedChi, the Maryland State Medical Society, and the American Academy of Pediatrics Maryland chapter. I don't know if there was an issue with signups, but we actually are support with an amendment. We're very supportive of the objectives of House Bill 558. And to that end, our amendment would be to take out the parental option for the opt-out provision. As my colleague before me stated, the topics covered in those opt-out provisions are equally as important, and every child should have an opportunity to learn and engage about them. Thank you.
Okay, sorry, this is my first time testifying. Okay. Hello, members of the Ways and Means Committee. My name is William O'Donnell. I'm the Vice Chair of the Maryland Youth Advisory Council, and we are requesting a favorable report. In Maryland education, the base curriculum of our nation's history and government has been set and respected. But when it comes to teaching about health and wellness, the curriculum standards are always contested. No school should have the jurisdiction to be able to pick and choose from our state's health curriculum. This bill, House Bill 558, ensures comprehensive health education will be instituted and taught, and that every child understands these issues. As Delegate Atterbury said well, youth should have access to a reliable source to offer health advice, rather than alternative of students having nowhere else to turn and engaging in risky behaviors. Far too many teens turn to the internet to learn about health and most find misinformation, dangerous adult content, glorification of substance abuse and eating disorders. A standard public school comprehensive health education curriculum counters this misinformation. I want my peers to be able to receive the quality education that they are entitled to, an education that does not ignore sensitive and controversial topics that some deem to be inappropriate. I asked to oppose this legislation. As a gay student from rural Maryland, is my life too political to be talked about? Am I not fit to be taught about healthy relationships in the same way that my heterosexual classmates are? Nothing that I've been taught in my health classes from kindergarten to now as a senior in high school has resonated with my experience. The only place where I've felt safe to explore my identity was online, anonymous and free to explore topics without embarrassment or fear. Yet as a result of my involvement with these online spaces, I've become increasingly fearful that nobody would accept me for who I actually was. I was not taught about mental health in a capacity that would help me or others. Nobody, no matter who they love, should feel embarrassed to ask about their identity, nor should we have to plead to be properly represented. Under this bill, the state will simply decide the curriculum guidelines as it always has. Local school systems and parents will still play a large part in the development of future curriculum as they do now. The new language in this bill provides much needed accountability from local school systems to ensure that all Maryland youth are provided with the comprehensive health education that they need to ensure that they will be safe and healthy adults. There is no doubt that we, or I, as students and youth, are the largest constituents in this bill. Alongside the rest of the Maryland Youth Advisory Council, I call upon the Maryland General Assembly and the Ways Means Committee to pass this bill again for 2024 legislative. Thank you.
Awesome and perfect timing. Great job. Thank you. All right, we do have one other person who's favorable with amendment who is signed up for in-person testimony. Is Lee Blinder here? All right, not seeing Lee, we will move to our favorables that are virtual. So if we could bring up virtually Jaden Ferris, Nicole Hollywood, and then we do have a few additional that are favorable with amendment who are virtual. All right, so Nicole is in the wait room. We'll bring Nicole in.
Greetings, committee. My name is Dr. Nicole Hollywood. I'm a professor in the University System of Maryland, a member of the Maryland Commission for LGBTQIA+ Affairs, a board member of PFLEX Salisbury, and a resident of the Eastern Shore, and I am submitting this testimony in favor of House Bill 558. It's vital that our state's health education be updated to be comprehensive, inclusive, age-appropriate, and relevant. School-based health education helps young people acquire an accurate and purposeful understanding of their own health that will strengthen positive attitudes, beliefs, and behaviors necessary for them to adopt and maintain and make healthy decisions throughout their lives. Studies have found that students who receive comprehensive health education make safer, more informed, less destructive choices, and are better at exerting agency over themselves. Further, the research shows that improving the health acumen of young people not only has a positive influence over their own personal choices, but can also impact the behaviors of their peers, family members, and others in the community. Building the health knowledge of young people ensures that teens learn to think about what is right and safe for them and how to avoid coercion, sexually transmitted infections, and early and unattended pregnancies. Most importantly, it helps to keep young people safe from abuse by teaching them about their bodies and how to have agency over their bodies. There are also economic benefits to comprehensive health education, as exhaustive health education can increase health literacy, the lack of which is estimated by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services to cost the nation $1.6 to $3.6 trillion annually. The National Action Plan to Improve Health Literacy by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services includes the goal of incorporating accurate, standards-based, and developmentally appropriate health and science information and curriculum in childcare and education through the university levels. Additionally, the National Committee on the Future of School Health Education and the Society of Public Health Education and the American School Health Education Association all developed recommendations for strengthening school health education. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your testimony. I think the only other virtual at this time that we have in the room is Wendy Novak, who is favorable with amendment.
A middle school student witnesses hate in schools. They have heard students saying that only white people are LGBTQ. If you are or support LGBTQ people, you are going to and have witnessed clear class discussions on the gender identity of a student. Children learn from their parents. Are LGBTQ students more likely to visit school out of fear for their safety and more likely to be physically harmed on school campuses? When a student's rainbow was spat on, the teacher was unsure if they were allowed to respond. Teachers are not empowered to support our students due to fear of our Board of Education. They are not allowed to even ask a child's pronoun. Teachers are not allowed to tell children that bullying and harassment based on gender identity or sexual orientation is wrong. Counties have implemented the comprehensive health framework already. Unfortunately, Carroll avoids inclusive measures. They created a framework that does not represent all students, that excludes LGBTQ students, and heavily pushed it at the parents, with the Board of Ed stating it is better. Better because it denies certain students exist. In at least one school, even students enrolled in the state health curriculum did not discuss gender identity and expression or sexual orientation. The teacher said they taught the Carroll version, which was better. Countywide, there is no requirement for students to demonstrate knowledge of these topics, even if it is covered. Schools have a responsibility to represent all students regardless of sexual orientation, gender identity, and expression. When we allow schools or parents to opt our kids from learning about other identities, we are saying not all students are worthy of inclusion. Regardless of what a parent believes or not, their student will encounter LGBTQ students, staff, or faculty. Students are the stakeholders. They have a right to an inclusive education. I request a favorable report with the amendment to strike the opt-out for gender identity and sexual orientation. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your testimony. We don't see anyone else in the waiting room who was signed up, so we will move to questions. Delegate Griffith.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair, and thank you for this bill. Is it Miss Ward? I'm sorry, I missed her name. Yes, with the,
Christine Crone.
I'm sorry, I'm so
You were
sorry,
way
I missed her
off.
name. I was way off. I was looking at testimony trying to figure out, so I apologize for that. You'd mentioned you were opposed to the opt-out portion of the bill.
Correct.
And I guess my question is, the largest stakeholder in this is parents, because there are more parents of students in Maryland Public Schools than there are actual students in Maryland Public Schools. So why would we not give them the right to decide for what's best for them and their families in some very, very sensitive topics? I don't want to exclude that, and they're the ones actually funding their child's education through their taxes. So why wouldn't we give them the opportunity to at least opt out?
So the pediatrician's perspective is that they always provide gender affirming care. To that end, the topics covered in the opt-out provision include sexual identity and sexual orientation. A lot of the pediatrician's patients don't feel comfortable going to their parents and talking about these topics.
Mhm.
And which, as previous panelists stated, leaves children to go to the internet to find answers. So we support them learning this in a school setting, and parents are still free to teach their children different beliefs if they don't align with the school.
I'm not challenging on beliefs or values or any of that. I'm just referring to, and it's not saying that even, and we're not even assuming that the parents don't support these things. We're just simply saying, you know, you don't believe they should have the right to be informed and make decisions on what their kids are learning with. Again, as we all acknowledge, and the testimony has been very, very clear on, these are extraordinarily sensitive and important topics. So I'm not diminishing that. But because of the nature, you don't think they have a right to be informed on what their kids are learning in school since they're fit in the bill?
They are informed as to what their children will be learning because the comprehensive health education framework already exists. I believe at the county board level, it would provide an opportunity for parents to weigh into the material more.
But you don't believe they should have any right to opt out, as has been tradition on some sensitive topics in Maryland?
No, I do not.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Delegate Miller.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you. Just kind of piggyback, is there any age you don't think they should be able to opt out at any age? Because some of these sensitive topics go down into kindergarten.
Yeah, if you look at the comprehensive health education framework, some of the topics to, so to speak, check the box that they covered it. I believe gender identity and sexual orientation in kindergarten, they just have to teach that everybody is a person, and even if
That's
they're
curriculum,
different.
that's not the framework.
I'm just giving an example.
Right, so yeah, so is there any age that you think that parents should be able to opt their child out of that topic? I didn't mean to interrupt you, but it's the framework is and that's my next question, so. Yeah, is there any
I was just
age?
saying that piece of the framework for kindergarten could be accomplished by simply teaching children that everybody is created equal or is a
there
person.
any age you would be okay with parents opting their child out of that topic? No matter how it's taught or presented?
No.
Okay. And then the other piece is one of the things that is very confusing for parents is the difference between framework and curriculum. Because sometimes we prescribe framework so in detail that it actually becomes curriculum in how it's taught. And so that's why I'm with the framework piece, with codifying the framework piece, the framework very much is, like I said, very, very detailed. So where it says each county board shall create an age appropriate curriculum, and that's speaking to some of the ways that you were talking about that. Is there the leeway there for the creation of that curriculum in an age appropriate way, where a county like Carroll County or another county that wouldn't have to cover the topics if they didn't think it was an age appropriate, or is it with fidelity to every topic in the framework?
So if I could answer. So the way, can you hear me? So the way that it's written, if you'll look at page 3 of the bill, subsection 2, and develop first, in developing the curriculum under the paragraph, each county board will establish a committee that's composed of educators, health experts, and members of the local community. Members of the local community. So members of that community, and if we want to talk about Carroll County, we'll talk about Carroll County, because that's the county that is not, is always not complying with what they should be doing and teaching their kids. Members of the local community can participate in that discussion, and they can come up what they feel is appropriate for that community.
Okay.
But it has to include each of these topics. I also want to clarify, and I'm happy to send a link. I'm not going to print it out because we're not about killing trees. The health framework to everyone in this committee. For kindergarten, under gender identity and expression, what the locals are supposed to target when looking at kindergarten is kindergartners: 1, recognize a range of ways people identify and express their gender, and 2, recognize it's important to treat people of all gender identities and expressions with dignity and respect. We're not talking about teaching sex. We're not talking about teaching sex. We're not talking about teaching sex to our kindergartners. We're talking about dignity and respect.
Would that be the committee that they're having, the local community members? Is that like the Family Life Advisory Committee that would already be in existence, or would that be a separate committee since it's going into law?
I believe your local jurisdiction could come up with a committee and call it whatever they want and figure it out.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate Fair.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you, Madam Chair, for bringing the bill forward. And I guess my first question is simply, who is the most impacted client by the work that we do with this framework? Who's the most? We heard earlier that the parents are the most affected by this bills like these and the framework. Who's the most impacted client?
The children. And for me, this is a bill about safety. This is a bill about keeping kids safe. And those of you who have been on the Judiciary Committee, even for a year, you hear hundreds. I have heard hundreds of stories of young children being victimized and abused by anyone from someone in their family, to a teacher, to a neighbor, to a camp counselor, to going to visit a friend and it's their brother or sister or somebody at that house. So as Ms. Jordan stated, when you teach kids things that are medically appropriate way of doing something, then they know what to expect, as opposed to literally somebody coming up to them while they're at the neighbor's house and saying, hey, let's do X, Y, and Z, and these are vulnerable kids. It might seem unimaginable to those sitting here, and to some of you, it might not seem unimaginable. Everyone has a story, but there are plenty of kids in the state of Maryland who are vulnerable, who have low self-esteem or don't have families, who don't have somebody guiding them in terms of what is right and what is wrong and what is appropriate for someone to do to them. And honestly, that is what I worry about for our children in the state of Maryland. The things that I have heard in the Judiciary Committee that have happened to children will keep you up at night. And I'm sure the things that Ms. Jordan has heard over the years that she has been doing this work will keep all of you up at night.
And when it comes to the framework itself, is it safe to assume, without actually physically counting, there were roughly about 50 individual expert organizations and people contributing to this report and framework?
Yes,
And every county was represented?
yes,
So that means Carroll County sat at the table, reviewed, and signed off on this education framework.
yes,
Okay, and so when counties choose to ignore it, they're actually ignoring their own staff's recommendations and the experts in the field that have spent the time to study how best to roll out health education framework, health education to all students of all in every county in the state.
yes.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you so much. I see some members turn their buttons off, so it doesn't look like we have any further questions. Thank you so much, Madam Chair, and to
Thank
this
you.
panel. We'll now move to those who are testifying in person on favorable on the bill. Nelda Fink, Ayo Kamathi, Melissa Eidelman, and Laura Bogley.
One, two, three. All right.
You can begin.
What you said first.
All right, I guess I'll go. Hello, committee members. My name is Nelda Fink. I'm a devoted Christian living in Millersville, Maryland. Thank you for this opportunity to show you the unconstitutionality of this bill. I'm summarizing my 5-page testimony where I present legal proof that with this bill, the state is not only violating the constitutionally protected religious freedoms of the students and removing the autonomy of the county level school boards, this bill also establishes the American medical system as the state's religion through this curriculum and framework and the incorporation of the health department. The definition of religion from a legal standpoint is a set of strongly held beliefs or a set of principles and beliefs that closely parallel other well-established religions. I can easily go through Christian doctrine, my Bible, and show where each of these topics is covered by my religion. I can do the same with other religions like Hinduism and Taoism. Each of these include all of the topics as well as methods of healing and wellness. The state health department is not educated in my religion, nor does the American medical system include my religion. In fact, it can be proven that the American medical system is replete with rituals called protocols, all of which inflict suffering and are based on profit-biased, non-causal theories under the color of science and the color of healing. All these details are in my written testimony. I suggest you read it. With my testimony today, you are being notified of the allegations that what is being promoted in this curriculum and this framework is in fact a religion and is the state's religion. The notice is twofold. Moving forward is totally unconstitutional and is supporting a satanic ritual of the American medical system and therefore rejecting God. And moving forward, you will.
Thank you, ma'am. If you could wrap up, please.
Yes. Okay, wrap up. Yes, thank you. I'm sorry. Moving forward, you will have God as your judge as well as the judicial system. This bill must be withdrawn. I hope for a unfavorable report.
Thank you for allowing me to address the panel. I'm going to read my submitted testimony where you can go and see for yourself. My name is Ayo Kamathi. In 2023, I testified against many bills proposed in Maryland that were seeking to sexualize children. I am writing this testimony to share my concerns about teaching LGBTQ philosophy to children from an LGBTQ perspective. As an African descendant of the transatlantic slave trade, who was born and raised in America, and whose family has been in the United States of America since the 1700s, I do not want or will allow myself or family to be re-enslaved. LGBTQ is an affront to African culture. Today, as it was during our enslavement, we have never agreed to convert to this culture, and it represents a modern enslavement being forced on us. Yesterday, it was done on the plantations of America, and today it is being done through the US school system. Either way, our children are being sexualized against the customs and morals of our culture against our will, and I oppose any curriculum designed to teach this reprobate behavior to Black children. I don't believe it should be taught to any children. However, it is especially problematic to teach it to Black people because it goes 100% against our culture. It is actually a shift of SCSE, which is called Comprehensive Sexual Education, which is an international pedophile agenda, now reclassified Maryland as CHE. Please vote against this bill.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the committee. I'm Laura Bogley, Executive Director of Maryland Right to Life. I'm here for a little bit of a different reason. We respectfully urge your unfavorable report on this bill that far exceeds the state's limited authority to act in place of parents during the school day, particularly in the matter of student health. The public school system was initially authorized by parents only to instruct children on human reproduction, basic biology, not sexuality or sex acts. And that explains why you get a lot of pushback on this bill and why it was rejected last year. The American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists recommends that sex education be medically accurate, evidence-based, and age-appropriate. They also recommend that sex ed include the benefits of delaying sexual intercourse and preventing unintended pregnancies. But Maryland law does not require sex education curriculum to be either medically accurate or age-appropriate, and it is neither. Both Planned Parenthood and their affiliated Advocates for Youth have reported revenues received from providing training in Maryland public schools. They promote recreational sex decoupled from human reproduction purposes. They promote global access to abortion for minors, and they instruct school children on how to evade parents on matters of sex and abortion. Advocates for Youth develops the standards for Maryland school-based health centers, and they already operate outside parental consent by distributing and implanting birth control, subjecting minor children to abortion counseling and referral, and in some cases, providing or coordinating transportation to abortion mills during the school day with approved medical absences, all without parental notice or consent. Maryland Right to Life trusts parents to make the best medical decisions for their children. Once again, we urge you to put parents and children before politics and profit by issuing an unfavorable report on this bill. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Melissa Eidelman, and I'm a single mother of 4, 2 boys and 2 teenage girls, 3 of which are in Maryland public school system in Anne Arundel County, and 1 in private school, thanks to the incredible support of the Boost program of Maryland. Thank you again for this awesome opportunity to come advocate for an unfavorable report on HB 0558, which from my understanding pretty much is reintroducing the same bill from last year that didn't go through. I'm testifying today not as a subject matter expert, but just a mom that feels she is more of an expert and knows what is best for her children than any legislator. I did speak up against this bill last year because of the things myself, my children, and I experience. But this time I'm speaking on behalf of not wanting the state to strip away local control from our school boards, as this bill is doing that. Just like I feel I'm an expert of my children, I feel my local BOE is more in touch with their local community students' needs and desires than the state BOE and or legislator. I have recently developed a trust and faith with the Anne Arundel County public school system with our new superintendent. He has been much more invested in understanding their local community and implementing things within their community that aligns with stakeholders' input as well as parents. Also, I think it is important to note that these local BOEs have representatives we voted for. They also have a much better understanding of our county and students' educational needs because we voted for them. Our local BOE should not have to be forced into a one-size-fits-all approach with the comprehensive health framework being put into a law requiring them to do so and legislate how the legislator deems fit. Last time was my first time at the legislature. This is my second time. So I apologize that I'm confused that a bill is being reintroduced when the Maryland State Board of Education opposed it last time, as well as MABE. So I'm just learning.
Any questions? Okay, seeing none, thank you all very much for being here. And that concludes. Oh, we do have someone. And you all can leave. Thank you very much. There's one person that has come virtually, Jaden Ferris, excuse me, who is in support of the bill. Okay. Whenever you're ready.
Oops, sorry, is this on 558?
Whenever you're ready for 2 minutes.
Sorry.
you.
Good afternoon. For the record, Jaden Ferris with Glisson, Maryland. We support House Bill 558. Very few LGBTQ plus youth have access to inclusive health education, particularly sex education. Research by our parent organization, Glisson National, found that only 8.2% of LGBTQ plus youth had access to inclusive health education at school. Additional research finds that LGBTQ plus youth perceive the health education that they receive in school as inadequate. Existing education not only ignores the needs of LGBTQ plus youth, but in the case of education centered around dating, intimate relationships, and sexuality, it promotes heteronormative stereotypes that exclude and marginalize LGBTQ plus youth. Comprehensive and inclusive health education aligns with the best practices in public health. It's recommended by the American Medical Association, the National Education Association, and the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, and the CDC. Failure to include the needs of LGBTQ plus students in health curricula means withholding the latest advancements and best practices in public health from all students. Inclusive education benefits all youth, not just LGBTQ plus students, by improving the overall school climate. Given the disproportionate health disparities experienced by LGBTQ plus youth, coupled with the research, demonstrates that inclusive health education reduces these disparities and improves school climate for all students. As such, Glisson, Maryland supports House Bill 558. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the committee? Okay, seeing none, thank you very much. And that concludes the testimony for House Bill 558. House Bill 472 is my bill. Again, I will step down and Madam Vice Chair will take over. And if Ms. Hannah Gargiola, and Mr. Alex Carney could come forward, I'd appreciate it.
You can start whenever you're ready, Madam Chair.
Okay. We can all agree on this simple bill. Good afternoon again, committee. This is House Bill 472, and I'm asking for your favorable report. House Bill 472 establishes a grant program to make standardized, accurate maps of schools accessible to public safety. So I have a lot of notes here, but this is basically what I'm going to say. How scary is it to think that children are in school, some of you, perhaps your children, and there is an active shooter, which we'll hear a little bit about that later, or there is some other altercation, or there is a fire, and the first responder and the police go to the school or are trying to figure out how to get to the school, how to get around the school, and the maps aren't accurate. So in Maryland, which is very scary to think, actually, a lot of the schools do not have accurate, maps for our first responders. So this legislation does the following things. It establishes a school mapping standard that is modeled off best practices from the military. It standardizes school maps by requiring schools to maintain a map that combines accurate facility floor plans, overhead imagery of the campuses, and a gridded overlay. It requires school mapping data to be verified by a walkthrough of the site when produced. Imagine that schools have had portables, there's been constructions, additions, and all these things, and the maps haven't changed. That's what we're facing right now. It requires that school mapping data be compatible with existing software platforms used by both public safety agencies at the local, state, and the federal level, and that future updates to school maps be shared with public safety without requiring those agencies to purchase special software or to pay access to the school's maps. I think that this is incredibly important, just following up on what I said on the previous bill as a parent and just looking out for all the kids here in the state of Maryland. I think this is critical for us to pass. And I ask you for your favorable report on House Bill 472, and I will pass it over to my panel.
Thank you very much, Madam Vice Chair Committee. My name is Alex Carney. I'm a former Special Operations Officer in the Marine Corps. I also represent a company called Critical Response Group, which maps schools, and I'm testifying in support of this bill. What I want to orient the committee on very quickly to start is that a lot of the principles of the philosophy behind this bill actually originated from how we plan and communicate during special operations overseas. For us, it wasn't how do you communicate in a big tactical nightmare building like a high school. It was how do you communicate about a remote location in the mountains or in the desert that you've never been to before at night under a great deal of stress. So what we did to solve that problem is we came up with a very simple concept called a gridded reference graphic, where we took overhead imagery of the location we were going to. We overlaid a grid on top of it, and the secret was we disseminated that map across all of the military services and units that were supporting that operation, so that everybody could speak off the same map for a place they'd never been to before under a great deal of stress. When I came home, I realized that this concept didn't exist for big buildings back here. People assume that every first responder knows, for example, where the art room is in the local high school, and that's just not the case. I mean, everybody here has probably tried to navigate in your kid's school on back to school night, and that's hard enough, especially when there's not a real emergency happening. So blueprints as they exist today, they are inaccessible to public safety and they're inaccurate. During Uvalde, for example, the floor plans were inaccurate, which caused bad decisions at the command posts. During Sandy Hook, the floor plans were inaccessible. So what this bill gives the opportunity in the state of Maryland is to make sure that every school has an accurate, usable communication tool for public safety that's accessible to public safety agencies and the software platforms that they're using. Thank you very much, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Madam Vice Chair and members of the committee. Hannah Gierzrola with Compass Advocacy here on behalf of Critical Response Group. When the chair and I first talked about this bill, we kind of bonded as mothers, knowing that it's a little bit scary sometimes to know that things are going on in another school and you see something almost weekly and you think immediately what would happen in my kid's school. So this system of mapping would be uniform across maps in Maryland, and the first responders would just have familiarity, even if they've never been to the school. We want to thank the FOP, the sheriffs, the chiefs for all being on board with this. We also talked with the firefighters as well. There seems to be a lot of support for this in terms of, I think you have letters actually, but there seems to be a lot of support for this in terms of the people that would be the first to answer a call. I also wanted to say, just kind of across the political spectrum, 7 states have passed this so far, and in those states, there have been no votes, Republicans or Democrats. So it's been unanimous in all the states where the legislature has been considering this piece of legislation. So with that, we thank the chair, and we urge the committee to have a favorable report on 472.
Thank you for your testimony. Oh, number of questions. Let's start with Delegate Patterson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you very much, Chair Atterbury, for sponsoring this bill. it brought back to memory what happened at the College of Southern Maryland when I was there. It was a new extension, and the person unfortunately had a heart attack. It ended up being a fatal heart attack, but the rescue squad could not find the building because we were new. And so there was a lapse in time. So my question is, would you consider, is there any consideration to extending it to not only public schools or Maryland State Department of Ed, but also to colleges? Because here the issue is still the same and they're bigger institutions, but it's really critical that this mapping be available. So that is my request, and I hope you would consider.
I think absolutely. Thank you, Delegate Patterson.
Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate Feldmark.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Madam Chair, for bringing this bill. I think it's a really important idea, and I was proud to sign on to co-sponsor. My question is just to get a little bit more into the details while we have some experts here. How does this work in terms of implementation? In terms of, you know, how maps are stored and accessed and making sure, I mean, I know my brain is not the right one to figure that out. I'm just curious sort of if you can share a little more sort of on the ground how this works.
I'm happy to answer, and it's a good question because when you're talking about maps of schools, there's really two parts of it. The one half is making a good map, which is half the battle, and that doesn't really exist right now. But that map is useless if public safety can't actually get to it during a real emergency. So within the state of Maryland, whether you're talking about a local public safety agency or a county agency or a state agency or even a federal agency that might get located here, you got to remember that even federal public safety agencies respond to school safety events. They use different software platforms often to access maps. So what the FBI is looking to access maps might not be what the local law enforcement or the 911 center or the SWAT team's using. So part of the nuance of this bill is ensuring that when a map gets made in that specific area, that the public safety agencies in that particular area that would respond to that school have the maps in the formats that they need to bring it into their systems. And that requires some flexibility from whoever is making that map, because they've got to ensure that that they can provide the data in a format that's usable for the kind of, often maybe up to a dozen or more public safety agencies that could respond to the school. So there's certainly some art and science to it. But the most important thing is that we're not keeping maps in a kind of a silo that no one has access to, that it's contemplated who's actually going to respond to that school. And we ensure that the maps are provided to them in formats that they can actually use in the systems that they look at maps today.
Thank you, Delegate Ebersole.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Madam Chair, for bringing this bill. I remember us talking about this a little bit last year. I'm looking at the fiscal note. The only thing I don't see, there's lots of good information there and we can go over it all, about how much would it cost per school, given, schools are different sizes, to map a school.
So, obviously, sir, we're only one of, probably many that make maps for schools. For us, it's about, I would say probably about $4,000 on average per school building.
Mm-hmm.
So, obviously some schools are big, some schools are small, some are tall, some are not. But I would say on average, for my particular company, it's about $4,000 per site. And what that covers is the ability to go in and make the map and walk the building and gather all the data that everybody needs, but also the time and energy it requires to integrate those maps into the software systems public safety agencies are using. So there's really two parts of it.
I just want one more question, if I may, Madam Chair. Does it require routine maintenance to the maps in years going out? How often and how much does that cost?
That's correct, sir. And part of the reason we're in the problem we are today is schools are big buildings and they obviously change year to year. I would say, in my experience looking at most districts, I would say probably a third of the schools go through changes every year. Sometimes that could be as small as an AED gets moved or a trauma kit gets added, or it could be a renovation to a part of the building or an addition. So the way we approach it is we do it as a fee that people can do to update the maps when they need to update their maps. And then we redisseminate it out to their public safety community. So it costs about $500 a school for them to do that.
You anticipated my next question. Thank you.
Delegate Miller.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Madam Chair, for bringing this bill. This is an excellent bill. I spent 8 years on a school board, and one of the biggest things we had, which we didn't even realize, that our local EMS, or one of our local fire departments, that we can't get into the school. And now it's even more important with every school doing security vestibules and shutting down access, which of course they've had to do for safety and security measures. But so making sure that our first responders have the ability to have that, especially the lock boxes part, and putting that into the legislation was definitely huge. My question is, how often would you want them, or would you recommend that they update? You talked about how long it kind of took to do this. So like a lot of times if we have an abundance of enrollment, you have to bring in new portables or you change things. So things do change even during the year, or would it be like in their annual school security update that they do, the school safety update?
I think there's two ways to approach it. I think if it's a major change, you absolutely want to update it in stride. It doesn't matter what portion of the school year it is. Obviously anything that affects the layout of the campus, not just inside the building, but also a new parking lot gets put in or new access road, that's just as important to public safety. So that stuff needs to get updated. Whether, a camera got added, I don't know that requires, that might be able to wait to the end of the year till, so there's not a one size fits all. But I would say on average, schools tend to have the capacity to communicate their changes about once a year, obviously, so if you make it too complicated, it becomes,
Hard, or they just
difficult to
might,
execute.
forget. Yeah, and then the other piece was kind of going on to the community college piece. Is there, we're doing a lot of public-private partnerships with pre-Ks and sharing some of these best practices with, our preschools and things like that may be a good idea as well. So, but thank you for bringing this.
Thank you, Delegate Hornberger.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I did this in the federal space for a little over 15 years. So I've got some questions in terms of the rural counties that I represent, volunteer fire, volunteer EMS. I've heard a lot of talk about software, but I haven't heard any about a tangible map. So they don't have the equipment to look at these CAD drawings or PDFs or whatever it is that you're issuing. Typically what I've seen is in a space, schools are usually 1 to 2 stories. At the main entrance to that space, to that building, you have a map on the wall. And that way, no matter who's responding or what capacity they're in, they have a layout of what's inside the space. Doesn't have all the room numbers, not that high of a detail. Is that included in this package? So that when folks do show up and they don't have access to these devices, they know how to navigate the building?
So in the bill itself, sir, it says that maps must be produced in a printable format. And, in my opinion, it's not just for rural counties. As someone who's probably spent a few hundred days of my life looking at maps, under stress, I think that human beings, and I probably watched maybe 200 or 300 active shooter drills watching public safety use maps. And I think that human beings always tend to they always gravitate towards a paper map if they can get to it. I don't know, it's just human nature. So
Right.
I believe it's absolutely best practice to be able to print out maps and pre-stage them. We have a lot of police departments that I've seen in particular, and also fire departments. They will print out maps in either in supervisor vehicles, like in a folder, so they could be handed out at a command post. In my opinion, however, some of the detail on these maps probably isn't something that you'd want necessarily posted on a wall. So I think a stripped down version might be valuable, but at some point you've got to balance security and accessibility. So it's kind of it's kind of a fine balance sometimes.
Okay, so interesting bill. Thanks for bringing it forward.
Delegate Griffith.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. First, Semper Fi, hoorah, thanks for being here. And if this was overlooked in the, if I overlooked this in the testimony, please forgive me, but wasn't this signed into law by both Gavin Newsom and Ron DeSantis?
Yeah, that's right. Both governors are supportive of the legislation.
Thank you.
Thanks for pointing that out, Delegate Griffith.
All right, a great ending to this hearing. That concludes.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Vice Chair, and congratulations on your shout out.
Oh,
The chair
thank you.
too.
That concludes the hearing on House Bill 472. Next up, we have several Prince George's delegation bills, and they're being represented this afternoon by Chair Delegate Nicole Williams.
Madam Chair, I just wanted to see if it's possible to do HB 396 and 398 together, which are, the testimony is essentially the same for both bills. Okay. All right, good afternoon, Madam Chair Atterbury, Vice Chair Wilkins, and members of the Ways and Means Committee. I am Delegate Nicole Williams, Chair of the Prince George's County House Delegation, and thank you for the opportunity to present on House Bill 396 and 398. These bills are similar in nature and allow Prince George's County to allocate revenue from the telecommunications and energy sales tax to our funding requirement under the Blueprint for Maryland's Future. Prior to the enactment of the blueprint, which significantly boosts state and county funding for K-12 education, the county had met its maintenance of effort annually to fund our schools, and the dedication of the energy and telecommunication taxes made sense then because it ensured that the county would have the funds to exceed the maintenance of effort level. But with the blueprint, that is no longer tenable or necessary. Prince George's County is not unlike any other county or the state, and is facing large budget deficits to the tune of $170 million. And while we know how to nimbly invest in our community, the fiscal position of the state and the county do come with tough decisions on funding. With the looming deficit, the county faces a tough decision to raise revenue or cut critical services that can threaten our community's well-being. With the blueprint now in place, these bills will allow for the funding of our schools and the ability to redirect revenue to funding our vital budgetary priorities and services. For context, we project that these taxes will generate approximately $66 million this year. And in the same year, our schools are receiving an additional $90 million in blueprint funding. But these funding systems, as they're currently written, do not work in tandem. We are proud that the Blueprint for Maryland's Future produces a funding formula that will provide our children with a world-class education. However, while we pass sweeping changes to increase education funding, as a county, we have to adjust our other revenue allocations to reflect those changes. These bills will allow us, in light of our historic investments in education, to reallocate those revenue sources to other functions of government. These bills are about budget flexibility that reflects not just our unique budget situation, but also the state's unique investment in education. And with that, that concludes my testimony on both House Bill 396 and 398. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Chair Williams? Okay, seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And that concludes the testimony on House Bill 396 and 398. House Bill 495, Delegate Pasteur.
Good afternoon, Chair Atterbury, Vice Chair Wilkins, and members of the Ways and Means Committee. For the record, I am Delegate Cheryl Pasteur, and this bill is cross-filed with Senator Charles Sidnor in the Senate. The purpose of this bill is to increase the transparency of the selection process for the 4 appointed members of the Board of Education, Baltimore County, who will be decided by the governor from the list sent by the Baltimore County School Board Selection Commission. The commission is responsible for identifying, interviewing, and sending several names to the governor for his selection of the 4 appointed members to the 12-member school board. Baltimore County Public School has a hybrid board with 1 student member who is elected by the middle and high school students. This bill, along with a newly crafted amendment, will bring it more in line with the openness of the public elections of the other 7 adult members. The bill will ensure that each member of the commission has the opportunity to be engaged in every aspect of the process. Finally, this bill will apprise the public and the newly elected members who the people are under consideration by the governor. The aforementioned amendment, precipitated by conversations with the delegation chair, delegation education chair, and the commission chair, has been made to ensure the integrity of the interview and deliberation process while respecting the applicant's privacy where appropriate. I respectfully request a favorable vote on this bill.
Thank you. Any questions? Okay, seeing none. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That concludes the hearing on House Bill 495. Is Delegate Morgan here? Delegate Morgan. Okay, we will. Is Delegate Weibel here? Okay, Delegate Vogel, you're up. House Bill 532.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I promise I'm going to stay for the whole hearing today, and I don't have 15 testimony folks here with me, but it's me, so we'll keep it quick. Committee, I am here with House Bill 532, which is a bill to expand access to driver's education for students in low-income communities and students in rural communities who face unique burdens accessing driver's ed, which we know is critical to creating pathways to opportunity, getting to school, getting to a job. And since the state stopped providing driver's education within schools, there have been pretty immense hurdles that many students across our state have had to face. So this bill creates a grant program that school districts can receive for schools to provide driver's education within the school building in partnership with driver's ed providers. With that, I ask for a favorable review, a report on House Bill 532, and I'm happy to take any questions. I think there's some virtual testimony.
Yes, we have Nate Tinbite. Whenever you're ready.
Sure. Good afternoon, Chair Atterbury, Vice Chair Wilkins, and esteemed members of the committee. My name is Nate Tinbite. I'm a proud resident of Silver Spring, a college student, and the former student member of the Montgomery County Board of Education. I speak before you today in full support of Delegate Vogel's bill regarding the Driver's Education Assistance Grant Program. In my tenure on the board, I engaged with thousands of students across Montgomery County and the state. Among the myriad of concerns voiced by students, access to affordable driver's education courses stood out prominently. Years have passed, yet the issue persists. I hope to shed light on some crucial insights gleaned from my conversations with students. Firstly, students and families bear a significant financial burden, often shelling out several $100s to meet the state's driver's education program requirements. A study by the AAA Foundation for Traffic Safety has underscored the troubling racial and economic disparities among teens obtaining their driver's licenses by age 18. Second, cost, convenience, and competing academic priorities pose formidable barriers to teens aspiring to become licensed drivers. Supporting districts' efforts to offer driver's education at school sites could alleviate these challenges, providing a convenient option for students juggling academic and extracurricular demands. Also, notably, earning a driver's license opens doors to increased opportunities, including part-time employment and broader access to goods, services, and experiences. On a personal note, I intimately understand the financial strain associated with driver's education courses. During high school, I grappled with the same challenge. To support my family and fund these courses, I worked early mornings before classes. If driver's education had been offered in my school, it would have lifted a tremendous burden, enabling me to focus more on pressing matters. Conversations with Maryland students echo this sentiment, underscoring the transformative impact of free or low-cost programs within high schools. In short, I implore the committee to consider the profound impact of this bill. It has the potential to ensure equitable access to driver's education while fostering a more opportunity-rich community. Thank you all for your time and consideration.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the committee? Delegate Ebersol.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So we have a grant here, $250,000 a year. And the idea is that this, if it was undersubscribed, would we expect it to roll over, or is the balance going to return to the general fund if it's not used? What are you thinking here?
I'm open to further discussions on that. I do have two amendments that I'm eager to work with the education subcommittee
I don't know
on.
who that person is, but we'll certainly.
If it ends up there, one amendment, it would actually raise the amount that every school could receive up to $10,000, since $2,500 is a little limited. And we would raise, we would expand access even further by lowering the farm percentage from 80 to 60%, making a larger number of schools eligible. So my hope would be that all the funding is used, but if it's not, I'm open to having it roll over to a different fund.
Yeah, great. And $2,500. Now, schools probably don't apply for this directly. Would have to pass through the local education agency, don't you suppose? But then they would be limited currently to giving $2,500 to a school for this. 80 schools. I can't do the math. I don't know if that adds up to 25 or not, but thank you.
Of course. Thank you.
Cheers.
Any other questions from the committee? Delegate Henson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Delegate, for bringing the bill. It's a fantastic bill. My question touches on the question that was just asked of you, and I think you may have answered it, and it's about the scale of the bill, how many students or schools you hope to be able to impact with the amount that you budgeted for in the bill. And then my second question was if you gave any consideration to putting this in the Department of Human Services. I know in Annapolis that our DHS in Anne Arundel County does offer help and tuition assistance with driving school because it can be very costly. And those programs are always need-based programs. And so people qualify, their eligibility is already vetted and they're shown to have demonstrated a need for that sort of assistance. But just for, future iterations of the bill, it may be a great area to work with DHS with as well.
Of course, and thank you, Delegate, for that question. The reason that we had it, or we have it currently with MSDE is because what we'd want is that engagement to be with the school, so that we could have these programs in the school building, so that students wouldn't have to, especially in the rural areas, so that they wouldn't have to commute long distances, often without reliable public transit, to get driver's education. To then be able to drive a car, to be able to, access or go to school and go to a job. The other piece here when it comes to, can you just repeat your first question briefly?
How many
yes.
students or schools did you hope to impact with the dollar amount you budgeted for the program?
Right. So I think Lori Richards' testimony touched on this, which is that this is I think a first step at expanding access to driver's education and making it far more equitable than it is right now. In touching on my colleague's question as well from earlier, our goal would be to see, how many folks apply to this program, how many schools apply to this program. Can we use all this funding and then proceed from there and continue expanding it so that we reach as many students as we can?
Thank you. And your fiscal note does give a great shout out to Anne Arundel County Public Schools that does provide space for these classes to occur while not funding. But then also I know that Anne Arundel Community College does as well. And you can use your tuition credits to be able to take the driver's ed course there too. Thank you.
Thank you,
Madam Chair.
Okay, somebody's showing off about their county. Any other questions? Okay, thank you, Delegate Vogel.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
And that concludes the hearing on House Bill 532. Delegate Morgan, House Bill 519.
So always good to be in front of and seeing my friends on Ways and Means. How are you all doing today, Madam Chairwoman, Vice Chair? How are you? I'm here today to present a local bill, HB 519. It deals with the Board of Education Civil Rights Data Collection and Reporting. This bill has local support from your delegation, as well as the county commissioners. There should be a letter attached. And basically what this bill does, it's really a simple bill that's brought to me by a constituent of mine who was looking for really overdose information that is taking place in the schools, because it's such a problem with the school system across the river in Virginia. So we were poking around on the website for our own school system, trying to find some information. And we came across the data, the Civil Rights Data Collection Report. And it's a really good, thorough report that I believe a lot of parents would really utilize if they knew it was out there and it was updated. So what I have here is a screenshot. I took this today from my computer. When you go to St. Mary's County Schools and you go to data collection and you click this, and then you click this link over here, this drops down an Excel file and it has this whole report broken out per school. It was last updated in 2017 and 18. So from research, I found that this report is actually a federally due report. It's due every 2 years. And frankly, it just hasn't been updated. Now, I'm not saying that the school system hasn't done it. I'm just saying that if there's a link somewhere, I've looked all over the place and I can't find it. So what the bill does is require St. Mary's County Schools to do the report yearly, make it downloadable on their website. We add 4 data fields to the report. That's on page 2 of the bill. Reporting incidences that occur on school buses, total number of drug-related incidences, total number of times Narcan was administered, and total number of ambulatory services used to the school. And that's it. And I think this report would do a lot of good. Now, I do want to take a little bit of time, if you don't mind. I'd like to address the fiscal report, the fiscal note, rather. I got this morning and I contacted the fiscal note writer, because if you look, it says that this report, this is like laughable, to tell you the truth, that this report, even though it's already required at St. Mary's, for them to do this report and adhere to it, it's going to cost $150,000. Now, let's put this in perspective, friends. They're already required to do this report. I don't see how in the world it could cost anywhere close to that. And this is the same school system that managed to track every student and whether they had COVID and update it daily. So to sit here and say that updating a report that they're already required to do is going to cost, a technology upgrade and another employee is laughable. So I told that to the fiscal note writer, and I told him if we get this thing out of committee, I'd appreciate putting a little bit more accurate note, because I'm not aware of anyone having any opposition testimony to it. But this fiscal note was actually created by the school system in St. Mary's. So I'm not sure why they would want to, try to sync the bill with, financial reasons, but it doesn't look right. So with that, I'd be happy to take any questions from the committee.
Okay, thank you very much. Madam Vice Chair.
Hey.
Thank you so much, Delegate. Good to see you.
Good to see you.
Thanks for dropping by for this bill. I just had some clarifying questions. So we know the civil rights data collection is a federal requirement, it's a federal survey around equal access to education that, of course, mainly deals with several civil rights issues. I just wanted to clarify, the data that you're looking, is this data that is already available? Is there any data that you're requesting that is new data that's not already required? Because we actually have federal requirements around the civil rights data collection, and this might affect us statewide.
Yeah, so look, we already have everything you said was true. And you look at that report, it is an extremely well done report. Very good. I mean, I think a lot of parents would get a lot of benefit out of that civil rights data report. What we're doing is requiring it every year and making it updated in the bill. So it's actually not 6 years out of date. And 2, what we're doing is adding 4 data fields to that report. So this could be easily done by the St. Mary's County Schools in a downloadable file, just like it is now. And talking a little bit just about how well this report is and the theory behind this and reason why we want it. If you go back and look at the 2017-18 year in St. Mary's County, we had this middle school called Spring Ridge Middle. It's a middle school. It actually has the amount of sexual assaults available in the report. Every person I've asked, well, how many sexual assaults do you think took place in a middle school? Well, it was 30. Now, if you're a parent that has a kid that goes to Spring Ridge Middle and you knew that, you're more inclined to actually get involved and maybe volunteer at the next middle school dance or become a member of the PTA. So basically what we're trying to do is just have some data that's already existing and make it more prominent and make it easier and update it and make it easier for parents to download to try to, fix some of the problems that we've had in schools.
Thank you, Delegate. I am a very big fan of the civil rights data collection, so I am really appreciative of your interest in civil rights and expanding it. My question is that in your research, because this is a federal data collection, this is not something that the state is requiring, this is a federal effort. Were you able to find out if we can just go ahead and add things to it, change the timeline and things like that?
So the way I drafted the bill, it's not adding something to or deleting it, it's recreating a report. So there's a federal requirement out there. This would be a state law bill and requirement for St. Mary's County. And what we're looking for is the civil rights data report, which they're already required to fill out, which is 95% of the data that we're looking for. We're just adding 4 data fields to it. And actually expanding it. So thank you.
Delegate Eversol.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. So I see we have a letter here from the county commissioners.
Yes.
I know the vote, I'm not gonna ask you because it's rhetorical that the vote wasn't unanimous in your delegation.
The vote wasn't unanimous in the delegation. It was one person abstained and delegate the 2 Morgans voted for the bill.
Right.
I think the senator actually had an issue with it. So he voted no. So that's why it still went through. It's still the House
So
delegation.
he has much chance in the Senate if the senator doesn't really approve of it.
Well, I think that it's like many bills over in the House is we pass it through the House and then we let the Senate deal with it.
Okay. And last question, you have commissioners saying yes. Did the school board weigh in or did you solicit the school board's opinion on this?
So under my recollection in 10 years that I've been a delegate, my school board has never weighed in on legislation. Most of the time they speak through their association, MAMBA, or MAMBI, I guess that's how you say it. Yeah, I've never seen the school board weigh in on legislation.
So you didn't ask them how, you didn't get opinion or ask any one of them for an opinion?
They were part of, well, they watched the committee hearing. This was, or not committee hearing, the joint delegation meeting. They knew the bill was being dropped.
Okay, so, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Any other questions? Delegate Hornberger?
Yeah, just last question. Thank you. And we spoke about this bill before session, so I appreciate.
Yeah, you did. You texted me about that. And I was thinking about that when we were coming down here. If another county wanted to jump on that, I'd be open for that amendment.
Yeah, so I'm not getting a clear answer though. Is the state of Maryland, specifically your county, in non-compliance with the federal government?
I don't know. I can tell you that the website's not updated.
Okay. And then are you familiar?
So if the parents can't get to the data, I mean, look,
Sure,
I guess they might be in compliance with actually fulfilling the requirements, but to my knowledge, I shouldn't say I don't care about that. I want the parents to be able to get to the data in a reasonable, and make it prominent on the website so they can actually do something about it and volunteer at their school if there's an issue.
Yeah, and then
if there's no issue, we want to advertise and say, hey, there's no issue. Good on us, but.
Right, and then the second question would be, are you familiar if there's any penalty for the state of Maryland not complying with the federal report?
I'm not aware of that. And tell you the truth, I never came across that in research, any research. I can just tell you the website is not up there.
Definitely troubling, and hopefully we'll get some resolve. Thank you for bringing the bill.
Thank you for your question.
Any further questions? I have a quick question for you.
Yes,
Delegate
ma'am.
Morgan. So you are asking, in addition to what the federal government is requiring, you all are asking for the total number of reportable incidents
that occurred on school buses, how is are reportable incidents defined?
I would say that it's defined just like the other reports of incidents of violence that's filed in the civil rights data collection. So if you go in that report, it'll tell you physical attacks without weapons, and it's broken out that way. So I would assume that the school system would break it out something similar, but those instances actually happening on buses.
Okay. All right. Any other questions? All right. Thank you very
Hey,
much.
thank you all so much and have a great day.
That concludes the hearing on House Bill 519. Delegate Weigel, House Bill 500, and committee, please welcome from Appropriations to hear this jointly with us, Delegate Harris and Delegate Wolick. And let's welcome them. Whoop, whoop. And Delegate Geist is supposed to be here, so maybe he'll come in. We don't know. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, Vice Chair, and honorable members of Ways and Means. It's good to be with you. I am Delegate Weigel, here to present House Bill 500. Dual enrollment has been a highly successful program, not only in Washington County, but statewide as well. In the fall of 2023, Hagerstown, 91% of those were from the county, and the other 10% were from outside county, private, or home schools. Statewide, there are estimated 19,000 students enrolled in the dual enrollment program. 6.77% of the estimated 281,000 enrolled high school students. With the program's success, there comes requests for additional participation. Currently, the dual enrollment program funding is made available only to public secondary school students in the state. House Bill 500 simply extends the program funding eligibility to non-public secondary schools and homeschool students. I just wanted to make a few observations on the fiscal note. Two things. One, it indicated that college tuition revenue could decline as the dually enrolled students only pay 75% of the cost for tuition. This statement, however, assumes that these same students would be attending that same college at a reduced rate. But I ask you, what if expanding the program actually attracts students that might not otherwise attend that college? And two, the fiscal note states that it is unclear if a local school system is responsible for the cost of tuition for a dually enrolled private or homeschool student under the bill. That is actually the bill's intent, so that the funding would be equivalent to that currently received by the public school students. So if there's an amendment required to clarify that, I'm certainly willing to have that drafted. I do apologize. I am a CPA by trade, so bear with me, but I think it's important that we understand the numbers and try to understand how many of our residents would be impacted by this bill. So non-public high school enrollment in the state is estimated at almost 38,000 students. The highest non-public school enrollment is actually in Montgomery County with an estimated 9,100 students, while the lowest is in Dorchester County at 12 students. In addition, there's an estimated almost 40,000 homeschool students for the 2022-23 fiscal year in all grades, ranging from a high of 5,100 in Anne Arundel County to a low of 139 in Kent County. If I estimate a split equally by grade, I can approximate that there's approximately 12,200 homeschoolers in equivalent high school grades. So doing the math, using the same 6.77% of public schoolers entered in the dual enrollment program, I would estimate that this bill would potentially impact approximately 3,400 students across all parts of the state. As I indicated, dual enrollment is a highly successful program, growing from 4,600 students in 2010 to 2011 to 19,000 students in the 21-22 school year. Extending the program eligibility funding to an estimated 3,400 homeschoolers and non-public school students is in the spirit of the governor's address today, that of partnerships, partnering with non-public and homeschools, as well as leaving no one behind, as these students too are residents of Maryland who simply chose a different educational path. Thank you, and I respectfully ask for a favorable report on House Bill 500.
Good evening, Madam Chairwoman and members of the committee. My name is Eric Dallavalley. I'm a resident of Frederick County. Thank you for giving me the time to present an inequality that arose while my oldest child attended community college during high school. I have 3 children that attend private school. It was a personal decision and were able to do so with the help of their grandparents. When my oldest child applied for Frederick Community College, I became aware of the blueprint for Maryland's future. In the blueprint, it spells out the ability for public school students to have greater access to community colleges. I reviewed the websites of Frederick Community College, Montgomery College, Prince George's Community College, and the Community College for Baltimore County. All explicitly state that there is no tuition fees or costs for books for county's public school students. Frederick Community College offers private and homeschool students 25% off tuition, but full fees and books. Prince George's Community College offers 50% off, and I did not see on any of the other websites explicit amounts for their private and homeschool students. Prince George's Community College actually allows a discount to any Maryland resident in 11th or 12th grade, not just those in their county. I believe that I do give them credit for that offer to students who may not live there. I do believe that students should be a resident of the county in which they are attending the community college in order to receive this benefit. This should not be a general statement for all private and homeschool students, as there are students attending the school with my children that reside in Virginia. If nothing is to change with this law, we will have to seriously review sending our kids to private school once they are ready to attend 11th grade. This is not an avenue we necessarily want to take, but I want to have them have the same opportunities given to the public school students in attending community college for free. The cost for our family to have our oldest take 1 class in the fall and 1 in the spring at Frederick Community College was around $900. Thank you for your time. That's fine. I'm good.
Any questions? Okay, seeing none. Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you to the Appropriations Committee members for being here as well. And that concludes the hearing on House Bill 500, House Bill 60, Delegate Guyton. And you have Megan Jones and Ann Seacott.
And means. Thank you, Madam Chair, Madam Vice Chair, and all of my colleagues here. Thank you, Ann. For the record, I am Delegate Michelle Guyton from District 42B in Baltimore County. And I want to point out, I don't need to point out to this committee that the language we use to describe people really, really matters. And I think we're probably all on the same page with that, no matter which Republican or Democratic Party we align with. If you were a child of 13 or 14 and you were going to a department that was tasked with training you to get a job after you graduated from school and worked primarily only with people who had disabilities, and yet they called you defective, I hope that you, like me, would recognize that that was inappropriate and disempowers the people with disabilities that that department is meant to serve. Okay. So I respectfully request your consideration and your favorable report on House Bill 60 to repeal antiquated and offensive language in our state code that defines disabilities, and it particularly defines disability in the Department of Rehabilitation Services, again, that only serves people who have disabilities. This bill replaces the term defective and defect with the word impairment. Right? That brings Maryland Division of Rehabilitation Services definition in line and updates it and fast forwards it all the way back to 51 years ago. By aligning it with the 1973 Rehabilitation Act and the Americans with Disability Act of 1990. Okay. As this committee has heard me opine in the past, the Department of Rehabilitation Services has been neglected in state law for about 100 years, up until about 3 years ago, when this committee started getting involved and looking at some ways that we could improve it by passing a task force and then passing some bills. Again, it works primarily in job training for students and adults who become disabled after they leave school. Right? It's had very few changes in statute. I hope this committee will recognize the power of language to either empower or disempower people and influence the success of our mission to gainfully employ people with disabilities, and that you will decide to modernize the Maryland Code all the way up to 1973 and provide a favorable report on House Bill 60.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the committee. I'm Ann Seacott, and I'm testifying today on behalf of the Disability Rights Maryland. You had called Megan Jones. She had to take a sick baby from daycare this morning. So I get to read her testimony. House Bill 60, as you've heard, will update the Maryland Education Code definition of disability, replacing very outdated language. And again, as the sponsor has said so eloquently, just bringing us to 1973 in terms of the language. Viewing disability as a defect, as is in current code, contextualizes disability as an individual's problem and promotes harmful ableism. This language is a remnant of the medical model of disability, which placed the burden of inclusion solely on the people with the disability instead of on society to account for differences and attune to individuals' needs. The prevailing model is now a social model of disability, and the belief that the, quote, defect or infirmity doesn't lie with the individual, but with a society that does not always value the inherent worth of individuals with disabilities and account for their unique needs and seek paths to full inclusion. Disability Rights Maryland supports the bill. We very much appreciate Delegate Guyton's work on fixing this here in the Education Code. We would love to see and work with the General Assembly to look at updating language throughout the Maryland Code moving forward as well. So with that, we'd love your support for this bill.
Thank you. Any questions from the committee? Yeah. Delegate Plakovich-Carr.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Delegate Guyton, for bringing this bill forward. I just want to make sure that the record's clear in terms of your legislative intent. Is your intent to not change the population, I guess, of people who are covered by this definition, or as you put it, it simply is just to modernize the wording? So no change in.
It's to modernize the wording. Thank you. And if I could say, there is another bill, to your point, by Delegate Aaron Kaufman in Judiciary, attempting to do the same thing in Judicial Code this year.
Any further questions? Okay, seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That concludes the hearing on House Bill 60, House Bill 600, Delegate Plakovich-Carr.
Good afternoon, colleagues. For the record, Delegate Julie Plakovich-Carr here to present House Bill 600. This bill would revise the requirements of the Child Care Career and Professional Development Fund. And these changes would help to increase the amount of high-quality child care providers in our state. Maryland, like so many other states, is experiencing major problems in terms of child care. Care costs are rising and the number of providers are declining. And this body has taken a number of good actions in recent sessions to stabilize childcare through the Blueprint for Maryland's Future, through pandemic relief funds and other legislation, but more work is needed. So the bill before you addresses one small piece of the childcare workforce pipeline. In the Blueprint, we authorized the Childcare Career and Professional Development Fund to help childcare providers to go to college to further their education. There are nearly 400 providers who are currently receiving assistance with their tuitions, fees, and textbooks when they pursue an associate's or bachelor's degree in early childhood education. And this bill would make two changes to that program. First, it increases the post-graduation service work requirement from 10 to 20 hours per week. And this would just be a prospective change. So folks who have already graduated or currently in the program wouldn't be impacted. It is just going forward. Second, the bill would set criteria for prioritization of applicants should there ever be a wait list for the program. Existing departmental regulations prioritize applicants who have not previously attended college. The bill codifies that. And it would also prioritize applicants who have been accepted by an accredited institution that offers native language or bilingual coursework in early childhood education or a related field. And the reason the second part is so important is because more than 20% of Marylanders speak a language other than English at home. And that percentage is even higher in many of the jurisdictions that we represent. It's nearly 40% in Montgomery County. It is also close to 30% in Prince George's County and about 25% in Howard County. So there are thousands and thousands of kids and families across our state who would benefit from having a bilingual childcare provider. Moreover, having bilingual or native language coursework options in Maryland would help expand the pipeline of providers who are credentialed to teach in public or private pre-K programs. Childcare in Maryland needs help on many fronts to continue to serve the needs of working Maryland families with children and to provide better employment for providers. And this bill would be a step in the right direction. Thank you.
Great. Good afternoon. Thank you, Champion for Childcare Delegate Valakovich-Carr, the Ways and Means Committee, esteemed Chair and Vice Chair for your leadership. I'm Christina Push, Executive Director of the Maryland State Child Care Association and Co-Chair of the Office of Child Care Advisory Council. House Bill 600 is an important piece of legislation that speaks to equity, supports actionable steps to address the critical workforce shortages plaguing the child care programs, assists in building a qualified workforce, and even better is done without a fiscal note. Maryland has awesome state-sponsored quality initiative programs and opportunities that many states do not have. The opportunity to attend college for free through the Child Care Career and Professional Development Fund is such a program that many states envy. The name Child Care Career and Professional Development Fund tells you this is a child care initiative requiring specific child care eligibility and funding through the Office of Child Care at MSD. This program lacks the equitable repayment of service hours based on the significant investment and the goal to build a qualified child care early childhood workforce. The service hours post completion of degree must be increased to 20 hours per week at minimum, because the 10 hours per week currently required does not help the child care program struggling with qualified workforce shortages that impact working parents and their children. Many CCC PDF graduates work 10 hours part-time in a before and after school childcare setting to meet the service requirements while working full-time at a public school or a related job where compensation is greater. Childcare is already competing with public schools for the workforce due to the implementation of Blueprint Pillar 1. We also have to continue to compete with the CCC PDF for teachers that should be prioritized for service in the childcare workforce with meaningful hours that match the meaningful investments. To build a qualified workforce, building capacity and support for the childcare community, the graduates should work in the childcare early childhood programs where they will positively impact children and support the economy, as childcare is an important economic and equity imperative. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Carolina Reyes. I am the director, owner of Arcoiris Bilingual Children's Center, as well as an advocate for the field. And I'm here to represent many of my, amazing early childhood colleagues. Having higher education reinforces the importance of professionalism, including pride and passion of being early childhood educators. The Child Care Career Professional Development Fund was created to help people within the childcare community to achieve higher education. Being able to expand the grant for people to attend a college or a university that offer native language or bilingual coursework in early childhood education is an imperative and inclusive milestone that our state can achieve by passing this bill. The Accountability and Implementation Board Blueprint for Maryland's Future in the December 23 report tell us about how our state can improve the pathway around 5 elements. 2 of those elements establish that a target to support accessibility to alternative certification pathway and support the early childhood educators who speak a language other than English. I am here to request your approval for this bill, which allow open opportunities for those like me working in this field. Childcare educators want to take advantage of this fund and acquire higher education, but English is not their first language. This is an amazing field full of diverse teachers who mirror the children that we serve every day. The long lead time can be drastically reduced by opening the CCA PDF for colleges and universities that provide bilingual or native language degrees. We found a community college in Oregon. This community college has an AA in Spanish. This model is an amazing model that we can follow, and I know that Maryland can do that. There is so much that needs to be done so that we can continue improving the early childhood education in our state. Thankfully, we are working towards that. And right now, by passing this bill, would allow us to do that. beginning the diverse, inclusive, and equitable pathway for childcare professionals. Thank you.
Thank you. And I believe we have someone virtually, Dawn Hendricks.
Yes, thank you. Let me start my video.
Oh, there you are.
Thank you. Good afternoon, members of the Ways and Means Committee. I'm Dr. Dawn Hendricks from Clackamas Community College. Thank you for the opportunity to speak on behalf of House Bill 600. In Oregon, where my college is located, just as with many states across the nation, there has been a recent push for early learning providers and potential students to begin earning college credits, not just community-based training hours, in an effort to encourage them to start their journey along a college pathway. However, for providers and potential students whose language is not English, who speaks a language other than English, this can often be a challenge if they do not have the academic proficiency in English to take and complete a college course. Thus, when the Oregon Department of Education announced a grant opportunity, the Grow Your Own Teacher Pathway, to diversify the teaching pipeline in 2021, we submitted a grant proposal to create an Associate of Applied Science degree in Early Childhood Education and Family Studies, completely available in Spanish. As we conceptualized the program, we knew that we wanted to eliminate as many barriers as possible for Spanish-speaking students to be able to successfully complete the degree. The first was to ensure that all of our courses, including the general education courses such as math, writing, and college success, were available in available in Spanish. The next barrier we wanted to eliminate was accessibility. We created all of our courses online with synchronous classes happening via Zoom in the evenings. So that way, folks who are already working in the field 12 hours a day or work in other settings are able to attend courses at a time that works for them, meeting in the evenings and on the weekends. We also eliminated the need for costly textbooks. All of the textbooks and readings that students need are embedded directly in the courses. We are an NAEYC accredited program, which is our national accrediting body, and we are partnering with other states such as New York to offer this opportunity to their potential students and also help them create similar programs in their colleges. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions from the committee? Okay, seeing none, thank you all very much. And that concludes the hearing on House Bill 600. House Bill 450, Delegate Martinez.
There we go. All righty. Well, good evening, Madam Chair and members of the Ways and Means Committee. For the record, I am Delegate Ashanti Martinez.
Wait, is this your first time in front of our committee?
It is.
Yay!
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Welcome.
I appreciate that. I would like a favorable review of the bill as well. So I'm here to present House Bill 450, the State Department of Education Soccer Opportunities Program establishment. This bill aims to increase opportunities for minority students to participate in soccer right in their communities. HB 450 establishes the Soccer Opportunities Program within the Department of Education, similar to the Lacrosse Opportunities Program bill that passed this very committee and the General Assembly a few years ago, and that has been a huge success. Secondly, this bill authorizes agencies and youth nonprofit organizations that provide soccer opportunities to apply for this grant from the department to continue their mission of providing soccer to youth throughout the state. And thirdly, the governor must allocate an appropriations of only $80,000 to this program. That's going to make a huge difference. You know, soccer is one of the most popular sports in the world, yet diversity continues to be a problem within the sport across the country. Attributing to this racial gap are the economic expenses that make it difficult for marginalized communities to have access to the sport. In many cases, especially at the much larger club and traveling levels, it can be really expensive for families. And according to the Aspen Institute, families can spend $900 per year on one child with one sport. These high costs make it almost impossible for many families to afford to support their children in these sports. And this bill would establish our commitment to providing youth soccer programs to historically disinvested communities. Additionally, soccer programs or programs like this are essential as they equip kids with the necessary life skills. You know, when engaging in team sports, kids are instilled with the values of perseverance, hard work, teamwork, and decision-making. Growing up myself, I played 3 sports year-round: baseball, soccer, and basketball. And then when I got to high school, I was also on the track field team doing shot put. I was a thrower for a couple of years. And so team sports have always been something that helped shape me, and providing these opportunities is something that this bill will do. And I'll end with this. Our children, it is my belief, they are entitled to opportunities that will help define them to greatness. And this legislation ensures that students have the opportunity to participate in team sports and establishes a program here in our state that will serve communities and generations to come. And I urge a favorable report on HB 450. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Taya Akimboni. I was asked to come here today to speak on behalf of the bill. Sorry, this is my first time, so if I'm a little bit nervous. I'm not a speaker. I'm a coach. I'm a soccer coach at Prince George's Community College. And my son, who's 17-year-old, Matai Akimboni, is a professional soccer player. He turned pro at the age of 15. He currently plays for DC United. He would have been here with me, but he's currently in Saudi Arabia with DC United. The reason why I think this is a great deal, because I know the sacrifice that my wife and I have put into our kids. We have 2 boys. One is 17, one is 13, playing U14 for DC United Soccer Academy. Over the years, I have owned and started soccer clubs, South Carolina Soccer Club in Clinton, Maryland, and Upper Marlboro, Maryland, to support kids and develop kids. But the heartbreaking thing that I found out is a lot of families are unable to stay and keep their kids engaged because of the high cost of the sport, not just soccer, but all the sports. Yeah. So this will provide funding for them. It's heartbroken because my son is 17 years old. He's a pro. He's already doing what he wants to do in life. But when I go back now to recruit kids his age that he played with at 7, 8, 9 years old, they're no longer playing the sport because the family simply couldn't afford it. They found different ways to play video games, or, you know, some even got into some illegal things and other non-legal things because they don't have the means to stay focused in sports. Is something that they love. So I think you guys should support favorably to this sport to keep kids engaged.
Thank you. I'm going to call the names. Delegate, there was, just to see if they're here, Gregory Smith, Mark Cantor, Nathan Meadows, and Justin Holbrook were all signed up, but it looks like they are not here. Looks like there are quite a few questions for you, Delegate.
Oh, no.
We can only have so many, we can only put so many lights on at a time. They all had questions too. Does anybody have a real question? Okay. First, sir, I just want to congratulate you and your sons. I love hearing stories like that. I have 12-year-old that plays football, and he gave up soccer, which kind of broke my heart, but he did state champ, so that's good. And he does travel basketball. I got another one does travel basketball and soccer. He's trying to be like Messi or somebody. and then my daughter doing dance, and the cost is like no joke, like seriously. So Delegate Ebersol and Delegate Patterson.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. And you've modeled this after a program that currently exists in law, I believe. Is that correct? There's a lacrosse program like this that exists, I believe.
Yes, you are correct. So a few years ago, Delegate Jay Walker, who I believe was a member of this committee, as well as Delegate Justin Ross, worked on a bill to establish the lacrosse opportunities program that currently exists and is providing grant programming to counties like mine, Prince George's, so that kids can play lacrosse.
Outstanding. And does it have a similar sort of this, looking for the right word, selection process for what counties are eligible for it?
Yes, and so there actually, I failed to mention, there are some amendments that actually match it to what those criterias are, because we wanted to make sure that they were identical to the lacrosse program, and those will be presented before the subcommittee.
Well, thank you. Thank you for bringing it.
It was a good question.
This is modeled after the lacrosse opportunities program, and to also give a shout out that Charles County would be one of the beneficiaries, and that my two sons were part of the select soccer team in that county. Thank you.
No, that's fabulous. Yes, the bill will be modeled identical to the lacrosse program that already passed.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, seeing none. Thank you both so very much.
No, thank you guys kindly.
And that concludes the hearing on House Bill 450, House Bill 456. Delegate Fair. And whoever you'd like to join you up front. You have one favorable that's virtual. Jane.
Thank you so much. It's not often I get to be the oldest person sitting at the table, so this is very exciting. Chair Atterbury, Vice Chair Wilkins, and esteemed members of the Ways and Means Committee, for the record, I am Delegate Chris Fair presenting House Bill 456. House Bill 456 aims to balance and create equity in our student members' voting rights on county education boards. This legislation marks a significant step in valuing student perspectives and educational governance, addressing a need we have deliberated over the last few recent years. A bit of history is needed here. For 50 years, at least one school system has had a student member with voting rights. That school system is here in Anne Arundel County. Since empowering that student with full voting rights, and just over the last few years, 6 other counties and the State Board of Education have weighed in and provided their students with a variety of voting rights. Now, with a third of existing boards of education providing student member voting rights, Senator Lewis Young and I set out to identify an equitable way to enfranchise student board members across the state. We found the most logical way to do this is to tie student member voting rights to the Maryland State Board of Education members' voting rights. The bill empowers students by granting them a vote on decisions impacting their education and their environment. They are the most connected client to the decisions of the Board of Education. They see and feel the impact of the board each day. The legislation places the same restrictions as the state board member, including on personnel issues and on the appeals process. The bill does include a provision to support local boards to then expand on those voting rights how they see fit, guaranteeing local autonomy. Finally, I've submitted an amendment, and here's a quick story about the amendment. When we initially filed this bill, the intention was simple: to make sure that all the local county boards match the student board member voting rights at the state board. We did not want to diminish anybody's existing voting rights in any counties, and we expressed that repeatedly. We had numerous conversations with our drafters trying to make sure that that didn't happen. Over the weekend, it was the student board member from Prince George's County, thank you, Prince George's County, who identified a glaring hole in my legislation that was actually going to rescind voting rights for various counties throughout the state. And so I was able to put together an amendment before today's hearing, thanks to that student board member who took the extra due diligence to find out exactly what was wrong with the legislation and call our office and make a suggestion. These student members are smart, they are capable, they are engaged, and they deserve the same level of respect and decency that all other board members receive. With that, by supporting House Bill 456, we affirm our commitment to an inclusive, client-centered decision-making and valuable contributions of our student population, and I urge a favorable report of this legislation. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay. Well, hello, everybody. I've never been this nervous for public speaking before, and I've spoken in front of thousands of people. Anyways, hello, members of the Ways and Means Committee. I'm Jordan Hayes, and it is my pleasure to come before you and offer testimony in favor with the amendments of House Bill 456, County Boards of Education, Student Members, Voting Rights, and Participation in Executive Sessions. If enacted, this bill would allow student board members of the state of Maryland to have voting rights that are on par with the member of the Maryland Board of Education. Before I get into my personal experience and reason why this bill is imperative to the enhancement of student voice, I would like to state that I'm the current Calvert County student member on the Board of Education. However, I'm not speaking on behalf of the CCPS Board of Education. I'm speaking for myself and my experiences as a SMOB today. Student board member voting rights solidifies a space for guaranteed student voice that people actually consider a part of the conversation. It proves that our school systems do not take the student perspective for granted, and it gives students the opportunity to fight for the changes they need in their education on a peer-to-peer level. Something I've been telling CCPS students since my election almost a year ago is that students are the biggest stakeholders in their education. As students, we are the ones experiencing the effects of decisions made at the Board of Education level. As students, we are the ones being influenced by our education system. And as students, we are taught that our opinion matters, our voice matters, and we can affect change. We've been learning this since elementary school. This is our opportunity to put those teachings into practice. Because we have the student member position, students are capable of influencing decisions in their education. The keyword here is influencing. In very few counties in Maryland do students actually have a vote which does more than influence. It impacts. As a student enrolled in Calvert County Public Schools, I want to ensure my voice is being heard, represented, and acted upon when it comes down to my education. To put it plainly, the point of this education system we are all currently or have been previously a part of is to prepare us for the quote-unquote real world. It lays a strong foundation of skills, ideas, and plans for us to take the next step towards our future. As the ones benefiting from the successes and being put at severe disadvantages and losses, it is only right. I urge you, as a student and secondly as a board member, a favorable report with amendments on this bill.
Hello, my name is Rain Rivera Forbes, and I'm a senior in the Prince George's County Public School System. I'd like to first clarify that my views are separate from the Prince George's County Board of Education. 4 years ago, as a freshman in high school, a young student leader joined her Regional Association of Student Governments as a middle school advocate. She worked towards securing student member of the board voting rights in her county by collaborating with previous MOBs. And in 2023, she was able to successfully become the student member of the board and advocate for all PGCPS students, passing major budget items that expanded access to career technical education programs, along with building new schools and having more resources for students. She effectively and efficiently shared the student body's voice with the Board of Education and voted on their behalf. Now that you've heard her story, allow me to reintroduce myself. My name is Rain Rivera Forbes, and I'm the 43rd student member of the Prince George's County Board of Education. I'm the first Prince George's County Public School student member of the board to vote on capital and operating budgets, school closing and reopenings, and student disciplinary matters. But I'm not here to tell you about the impactful votes SMOBs can make. History has already proved itself. This is about why it's important for SMOBs to have the right to vote. A Board of Education is charged with making decisions that impact students in their county. Without a student's voice at the table, how can a board effectively run? How can we advocate and decide on a body we cannot hear? I'm among the legacy of student leaders making a positive impact on their community. We have the choice to make a boundary-breaking decision, making Maryland the leader in student leadership and giving our students the platform to use their voices. If our voice is limited, you cannot hear us speak. I support this bill as a student and also support Delegate Fair's amendment that ensures SMOBs who already have extended voting rights would not have their rights limited with this new bill. The time is now to give our students the platforms that they deserve. We are here to oversee the education of our future presidents, senators, and delegates. What are we waiting for? Thank you.
Hold on. Sorry, committee members. While those testimonies may be hard to follow, allow me to reintroduce myself to the committee. Hello, my name is William O'Donnell, and I'm the Vice Chair of the Maryland Youth Advisory Council. The inclusion of student voices in educational decision-making processes is not just beneficial, but it's essential to creating learning environments that are responsive to the needs of all stakeholders, from students to parents and to teachers. House Bill 456 recognizes the valuable perspective that students bring to decisions on educational policy and school administration, rightfully enhancing our ability to contribute meaningfully to conversations affecting our future. This bill proposes to amend the current limitations on the voting rights of students members of the board, empowering these future leaders to vote on a wider range of issues affecting their constitutions, spread actual impactful change. This expansion is a necessary step towards bettering Maryland schools. Maryland is a leading state in education, which means that we have the responsibility to set an example and accelerate education for both our young Marylanders and our onlookers. Just as Anne Arundel County did in 1975 when they established their student board member position, and as other jurisdictions are now planning to do. This bill not only emphasizes and addresses the current disparities in representation, but also underlines the needs to empower youth stakeholders to carry out their voices, as demonstrated by voices like the Maryland Youth Advisory Council and the Maryland Student Board Member Association. I believe that's correct. Young people are not only apathetic to the decisions made by adult leaders, but have adequate knowledge and to participate politically. By enabling student board members to make to access greater voting rights, we recognize their capability to contribute meaningfully to education discourse, ensuring that student voices are heard and considered throughout the decision-making process. The Maryland General Assembly today, this session, has the opportunity to pass meaningful legislation that will lead Maryland to champion a proven model of student engagement, providing youth with resources necessary to lead a brighter, more intelligent, and more inclusive future for generations to come. For these reasons, the Maryland Youth Advisory Council adamantly supports House Bill 456 and respectfully requests favorable reports with amendments from Delegate Fair for the committee. We respectfully thank you for the consideration of our position. Thank you.
Thank you. And do we have someone here with us virtually? Yeah, okay. So we have Jaden Ferris with us.
Hello again. For the record, Jaden Ferris, Clisson, Maryland, and 2 years ago I was a nominee for student member of the board in Anne Arundel County. So Clisson, Maryland supports House Bill 456, which allows student members to serve as voting members on local school boards. To support the development of life skills for youth, contribute to improve self-esteem, and assist students in cultivating democratic skills. All of these experiences will positively contribute to their development throughout their educational pursuits. Giving students the ability to participate as voting members during executive sessions will help develop a useful skill set that can be utilized throughout their entire educational journey. As voting members, students will learn to research and take responsibility for their decisions and develop their leadership capabilities. Students in this role will also sharpen their communication skills as they learn to interact across various levels of administration, the community, and with their peers. This experience will also allow students to develop a deeper understanding of administrative and community processes. Students who are elected to serve in this role will gain the experience of being positively viewed by their peers as well as their school administrators. This engagement will contribute to the students' overall confidence and boost their self-esteem. Finally, students who participate in this capacity will also gain invaluable knowledge of policies and practices that will lead them to be more engaged citizens in the future. Clisson, Maryland strongly believes that including students in processes that impact them is critical to sustainable outcomes for new policies and initiatives. Thank you.
Thank you. We do have a couple of questions. But first, I would like to thank all of our young folks, so not you, Delegate Fair, but you know, honestly, this may sound a little crazy. You all don't know me, but I am just so proud of you all for coming up here and advocating for whatever your position is. I'm sitting here like, I hope my daughter does this one day. So I will start our questions with Delegate Eversole.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I've taught high school for a long time, and I'm going to pontificate for a moment and then get to a question. You're going to get asked some hard questions as you go through this, and people are going to say that maybe high schoolers and people your age are not allowed to do certain things. I'm going to submit that just because your next door neighbor is not qualified to be president doesn't mean that no one is qualified. There are students out there who might not be qualified to be a student member of the board. That doesn't mean none of you are, and we can see by looking at you that you are. Okay, and thank you for being here. Now let's get down to brass tacks. Some of you can vote on budget and some of you can't. Wouldn't it be difficult to vote on a policy and not be able to vote on the budget to stand behind it? And that's sort of a yes or no question. And then I want to know which counties already allow this and successfully execute this at this point in the state. I'm proud that one of the ones you're going to say is one of the ones I live in.
So I will take the second part of that question and allow the student members to answer the second part. Currently, we have 7 boards of education that have various student voting rights. And then we have, of course, the state board member as well, which has student voting rights. And so those jurisdictions are Baltimore City and Arundel County, a place called Baltimore County. I don't know if you've ever heard of that or not.
I've been through it once or twice.
Once or twice?
Yeah.
Montgomery County, Prince George's County, Howard County, and Hartford County.
Yes, and thank you for that. And so then talk to me about your response, how you came to feel you were responsible enough to execute decisions on this.
So I'd like to begin by prefacing, I have recorded opinion vote on everything except budget and negative personnel. So we can talk about a policy and I can say, I'd like it to be notated on the minutes that I agree with this, or I would like this to pass, but it doesn't actually affect the overall board decision. However, I am allowed to create a policy and bring it to the board and say, I'd like this to be passed. I'd like us to work on this and create a motion. And the biggest struggle that I've discovered with that and not having information about the budget that isn't accessible to everybody else in the county is that a lot of times I will propose a policy and not know that we can't fund it, or there's information about the budget in terms of that. And that really hinders my ability to effectively represent the students and say, yes, we can execute this, or no, we can't, or here's how we can work around it.
Thank you. Exactly the comparison I wanted. I appreciate that.
Delegate Young.
Wait. Oh, there it is. We got a lot of blinking lights going on there. In fact, I've got a question for myself, apparently.
You can blame Holmberger for that. Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you, Delegate, and to the young people. Just thank you for the work that you do. Thank you for stepping up and being that youth leadership that's going to be our future. My question first is just to put on the record, Delegate, that this bill would not require any local school board to put a student on the board if they aren't already providing for that. Is that correct?
That's correct. I believe every jurisdiction already has a student board member identified in code that they can put a student board member on there. Some school systems have more than one student board member, but I think every system has at least one.
And my second question speaks to some of the things that the students would not be able to vote on. I'm specifically looking at this appeals piece. I'm trying to do a quick overview of that portion of the statute now, but can you just give us a high level on kind of what some of those parameters are and what was the rationale and why they are excluded?
Yeah, so the rationale behind anything that they are excluded from is that it just simply ties to the state board member. We asked Legislative Services to look into exactly what the state board member can't vote on, so that there's like this parity and equity question is answered, and we kind of take our own personal opinions out of it. And what we found was these three specific areas. The appeals process has a lot to do with decisions made by the superintendent of the school system. And when that decision is being appealed either by a board member or by the general public, they believe that at that point, I'm speaking without knowing here, but I believe that their intention is if the superintendent's decision is being appealed, this needs to go to a high level decision between the boards of education. Now, certain school systems like Anne Arundel County and others do not have that prohibition, but the state board member does, and so we built it into all of the access to voting rights.
I'm always an advocate of the impacted people being the ones that are helping make decisions, which is why even having students on the board is so important. So I can follow up later on some of that rationale, but thank you for your answer and thank you to the youth again.
I appreciate that. And we'll connect you with the state board as well to have that conversation.
Absolutely. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Delegate.
Delegate Miller.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you, Delegate Fair, for bringing this bill. So I have a couple questions. One is just an overall comment. So I served 8 years on the Board of Ed. I served with 7 different student voting members. Some of them were absolutely incredible, who I would entrust complete full voting rights. And to the delegate, to Delegate Ebersol's point, some of them were not. And I served, like I said, with both of them. So that part is a little bit concerning, but at no time did not having that official counted vote. I mean, their vote was recorded, similar to what you were saying, but the respect was always there. The value in their opinions there, the value of what they brought to the board and bringing that message from the students was always there. And always, so I just want to speak up with my, fellow school board members is we always valued any student board members' perspective, no matter how their vote was counted. Okay, so I just wanted to be clear about that. So I did have a couple questions. One is, so in the law, it's kind of a little silent, some about the payment benefits, things like that. Would any of the student board members receive payment with the voting or any kind of scholarship, anything like that as far as?
Not unless the local jurisdiction has already called it out. We didn't touch anything that has to do with payment. So
Okay.
if the local jurisdiction already offers a scholarship to their student board member, then that just carries forward.
Just for the student, but they would not revert to like a paid member of the board or anything like that?
Correct. No, there's nowhere in the legislation that calls for that.
Okay. And then the other thing is, what do you do? So Frederick County is obviously where we're from. And we already have 7 members of the Board of Education. We have and then a student member. So that would make it 8 if it was of any. What would you do in the instance of a tie?
So we would, I believe that rules of order are already in place that for tie votes, the motion does not carry. And so that is commonly held amongst most elected bodies.
But sometimes then you could wait till the next meeting if it didn't hold and bring it back up, because we have had tie votes when we had someone, it was usually when someone's missing. It's impossible to have unless somebody's not there and needs to be replaced or something, like if there's a vacancy. But that would be the only time that you would have on a 7-member board that you would have that situation.
A missing member. You're right.
Right.
I'm not disagreeing. I'm saying that
Right. So
that in a tie, in the case where all 8 members are present and voting and there's a 4-4 tie, then a motion naturally does not carry as any even number body would be in the same situation.
okay, so then it would just fail.
It would fail,
So
yep.
this would impact.
Just like the US Senate with 100 members, if there's a 50-50 tie, a motion doesn't carry.
Okay, so that could be very impactful. And then to this, one more to Delegate Fair, and then I do have a question for you students. The Howard County lawsuit, do you know where that is as far as the student member voting rights?
So the state Supreme Court ruled on that,
Okay.
and they made it very clear that student board members should be, or not should be, but it is constitutional to allow student board members voting rights. For the body's education, the student board member in Howard County, they attempted to file suit against Howard County to stop the student board member from having voting rights. That trickled all the way to the state Supreme Court, whereupon the state Supreme Court ruled with the student and against the motion to eliminate the student board members' voting rights. I believe it has now been appealed to the federal circuit court.
Yeah, it's in Richmond.
And so it's right now in Virginia being considered as well. So it's hitting a national player, but as we know, there are county boards of education across the country that allow student board member rights. I would be surprised to see a federal court weigh in and create so much crisis nationally as other states and other counties provide this already throughout the country.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then to any of the students who would like to answer. So as you've had your service on the board, it's difficult. Like, you're making decisions that half your community is not going to agree with. And so how did you guys handle, one of the things is, how did you handle the opposition? How did you handle to whatever that point is? Because there were times we had police presence, we had, threats, and we had all kinds of things happen in school board meetings these days. So how did you guys handle that?
So I would like to first start off with, as I am told by my grandmother, with anything in life, there's always going to be something that's negative. There has to be a negative and a positive. And for myself personally, how I've dealt with opposition is I've always reaffirmed myself. I am here to advocate on the behalf of the students. I vote for the students, and that's where my vote lies. I am here to serve the students and the students only and nobody else. And when you have that position, you make sure you take action on that behalf. And that is something that has been passed down through the SMOBs before me and the SMOBs that will come after me, because we all work together and we have a very supportive community around us as well.
Thank you.
I couldn't say it any better than Rain. That was, that's been my mindset since day one. I attended this fantastic conference right after I'd been elected. It's called HOBI. I don't remember what it stands for. And one of the speakers used to be a student board member. So I asked him, I said, what's your best piece of advice? And he told me, when you walk into a room, you are the controversial person there. It is you. Your position is controversial. 70% of that, you have to assume 70% of people in the room don't like you. Even if that's not the case, even if you're at Thanksgiving dinner with your family, it's just, it's very, having that mindset, while it seems negative, makes you more confident in yourself and your decision. When it comes down to it, like Rain said, my vote lies with the students. It doesn't matter if me personally, I'm in disagreement, my vote lies with the students. If the students tell me that they need this, that they feel this is necessary in their education, that is where I vote regardless of community opinion. I vote for the students.
All right, thank you guys. Thank you guys for being here today.
And I'll say that sometimes at my dinner table, 70% of the people don't even like me. So.
Delegate Roberts.
Sorry.
You're good.
Okay, great. As the only delegate on this committee from Prince George's County, I just want to say, you go, girl. And then you're representing very well. And I want to just ask, when you are in session and there's a vote happening, can you just briefly tell me what happens when you're deciding on a vote? And I know that your experience and what exactly and I know you said it before, but could you please repeat what rights you do have again as well?
So I can vote on the capital and operating school budget. I can vote on student disciplinary matters, which is appeals, and I can also vote on school closing and reopenings, along with other policies. The only things I am not allowed to vote on is personnel matters and collective bargaining. So those are a range of my votes. And how I vote is I always read the information that's provided to me. I believe it's very fundamental to read. I also take professional development courses, as that is something required for board members in my county. So anytime I have questions and I know I need more clarity on a vote that I'm going to take that's very impactful, I'm going to reach out to the chiefs of my education system and just sit down and discuss with them where are the impacts here, what schools does this affect, what community does this affect, because the votes are very big and they are very important. And after I do that, I will end up communicating with my student body. So I have a SMOB advisory council, and that's a council of students that are all around the county that will advise me on some of the decisions I make. And I also talk to our regional SGA president. There's just so many students in leadership that I can talk to. And once I get a gathered consensus and I know this is what the students want, this is important for the students, that's how I'll make my vote. And of course, with any situation, with any body you're in, you're always going to hear different opinions from your colleagues, from the others around you. And I take those into account as well, but I am very firm in my decision and in my vote.
And just one more question. Thank you. You're just so awesome. Just one more question. On votes that you don't get a vote on, do the members allow, or do the members give you an opportunity to weigh in with your opinion?
So since the only thing I can't vote on is personnel matters, I'm not in those meetings at all. So I usually don't know what's going on personnel wise in the county. And that's not a big push for me because it doesn't involve students majority of the times. But in any other situation, they're always hearing my voice. Even if it was something that I didn't vote on, Prince George's County is very, very SMOB friendly. I love that about my board. So they're always open to hear me and to hear my views.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Delegate Griffith.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to the students for being here, and thank you, Delegate Fair, for bringing this bill. And I just have to say, I know sometimes down here, 70% of the folks don't agree with me, but I certainly hope 70% of the folks like me. So I'll take that. So with that being said, so Delegate Fair, something you mentioned in your testimony, you said there's 2/3 of the county in Maryland that are not in compliance with your bill.
That's a great way of turning. I said 1/3, a third of the counties currently have student member voting rights. So yes, on the flip side.
So this would be overriding the will of 2/3 of the jurisdictions in Maryland?
Well, I wouldn't say the will. I don't think that we necessarily have the information or data that says that it's the will of all 2/3 of those counties. But I would agree with you, 2/3 of the counties do not currently have student member voting rights.
So this would change the rules, the self-guided rules of 2/3 of the counties.
It would change the student member voting rights of 2/3 of the counties. Yes.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
No, thank you.
Okay, are there any other questions? Okay, seeing none, thank you all very much for being here. We do have one unfavorable, John Willems, for 2 minutes.
Chair Atterbury, members of the committee, John Willems, representing the Maryland Association of Boards of Education. I will say it pains me to some extent to be here today as a longtime professional staff person with MABE. MABE upholds the student voice in public education, and we provide commensurate new board orientation and annual trainings for our student board members, including those without voting rights, along with the new board orientation, the professional development programs that we provide to other members of local boards of education. However, as this committee is also quite aware of, I won't say painfully aware of, we advocate strenuously for local control and governance authority of local boards and the development of the constitution composition of local boards, the presence of a student member with or without voting rights is a matter of local law, local courtesy in those sections of the education article that pertain to each local board relative to their composition, their compensation, and the scope of voting rights of the student members. And so we request an unfavorable on this bill in the context of preserving the local character of the boards developed at the local level, and not in any way casting any aspersions on the ability of our students to be participating and voting members of our local boards. I had the pleasure of attending the National School Boards Association conference last week, and the student member of the Anne Arundel County Board is on the cover of this month's edition of the American School Board Journal, and he spent the conference with us and our day on Capitol Hill visiting offices of members of the Maryland federal delegation, and just a testament to the outstanding young people we have serving on local boards. And he, of course, has full voting rights without any conditions or restrictions, the only one in the country we're aware of. So a shout out to him, but for the reasons that I've outlined, maybe as opposed to this bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Mr. Willems and Delegate Eversole?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and nice to see you back in form today. Well done. It's really not exactly on your testimony, but you piqued the question about training and professional development. Are there any counties in the state that require their board members, not the ones that are student member boards, but their otherwise selected board members, to take a training before they're allowed to serve on the board? Baltimore County does this to their student member.
Yes, and that's the only instance I'm aware of. Delegate, we strongly encourage new board members to participate in our new board orientation. We strongly encourage all board members to attend our annual conference, our two-day program of professional development services. We also provide online board service academies available to all members. And so we encourage the broadest possible participation in those events, but not aware of mandatory training at the local level. Certainly not ensconced in the education article as a condition of serving on the board.
And for student members, other than, I know that Baltimore County put it in when they granted the voting rights last year. Any other counties require the student to go through some sort of training before they can serve?
I don't believe so.
Okay, thank you. That's great. Just curious, really. Thanks.
Delegate Young.
Thank you, Madam Chair. John, thanks again for your testimony. My question is, I just want to clarify that what I heard is that the primary position of MABE is that it really just wants to preserve local control. Is that correct?
Yes.
So from a substantive standpoint, there's no other concerns about what else is in the bill?
Well, there are concerns, and have enjoyed working with Delegate Fair and talking through this bill. There are concerns that are addressed in amendments relative to the, it's unintended consequence if this bill were to somehow constrict the current broader scope of student voting rights, unintended consequence that is being addressed in amendments. So there were some concerns that were raised in my group of legislative staffers, from around the state that I believe are being fully addressed through those amendments. So no, the concern is really grounded in local governance and local control.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Delegate Miller.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just real quick, could you get me the information on, like, when I was talking about, like, making it a tie board, like making it an even number board members? Could you get me the information of the boards across the state of what their makeup is and what that would do? If it would put them in that position? I mean, I just see that as problematic as far as stalling things going forward.
Absolutely. We have that information. Yes.
Great, thank you.
Delegate Vogel.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and hello. Just a clarifying question here. In all counties, is it the Board of Education that determines the voting policy, or does the county council determine the voting policy and procedures?
So Delegate, it is in the education article, which means it was the subject of a local law or a series of local laws over time that are introduced and, you know, as you well know, generally then are endorsed by the local delegation and then granted local courtesy. And those local laws affect all of the various sections of the education article that pertain to just that board. So the composition of the Board of Education in Talbot County, for instance, currently has a student member from each of the 2 high schools in the county. They're non-voting members. This bill would change that language of the education article that's just specific to Talbot County to make each of those 2 student members voting members of the Talbot County Board of Education. But if the Talbot County Board wanted a raise in their compensation, they would need to come to the delegation and have a bill introduced to change the amount of compensation that's provided in their section of the law.
So if I understand correctly, it's not that the Board of Educations locally are going to be making these decisions. These decisions for individual counties are still going to be made by the legislature?
Well, this bill would make one set of decisions for boards with that currently have student members. You know, it would make one set of amendments to each of those separate sections of local law. But the bill would do something that is novel in that it would give the non-student members of the local board the authority to vote to expand the student members' voting rights beyond the scope of what's provided in the law. And I can't think of any other instances where a majority of a local board can vote to kind of modify the strictures of the statute as to, you know, a majority of the board couldn't vote to give the next board a raise. They would have to come to Annapolis and have that codified.
So sorry, and last question, but if I understand correctly, the alternative to this bill is not that local boards of education are going to determine the voting rights of student members of the board.
Right.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Delegate Eversole.
I'm sorry, let's clarify that a little bit. Right now, boards of education are agencies of the state and not of the they're not local agencies. And so generally local delegations make decisions based on that. And then if they're not precedent setting, generally the legislature follows through and allows them to do what they choose to do with their particular board in terms of voting rights and selection processes and all that. This bill, you're saying, would hand some of that over to the local board of education? Is that what you said?
Delegate, just in the context of if beyond the scope of the voting rights provided in this legislation, a local board wanted to expand those rights even further, say to the extent of the Anne Arundel County student member who has full voting rights, this bill wouldn't require that change come back to Annapolis as a local bill. It would allow the local board members to vote to make that change themselves.
Okay, thank you.
Any further question? Okay, seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And that concludes the hearing on House Bill 456, House Bill 489, Delegate Jones, and you can bring up whomever you'd like to come up with you.
The poll. This might be unorthodox, but I'd like to add the student representatives to my panel. Is that, can I make a motion for that or no? All right. Yeah, can we go get them and bring them back in? Wow. Here, okay.
Thank you so much, Chair Atterbury, Vice Chair Wilkins, and members of the Ways and Means Committee. I am so happy to see each and every single one of you. For the record, I am Delegate Dana Jones. I come before you today to reintroduce House Bill 489, a bill that seeks to minimally increase funding for the State Library Resource Center, SLRC. Over a 7-year period at the rate of inflation, SLRC is the state library for Maryland. Working with libraries across the state, SLRC provides cooperative, cost-effective resources and services for Maryland libraries and all of our constituents. Maryland's local library system serves a critical role in our communities. They provide a wide range of services to our constituents outside of being a place to read, learn, and congregate. SRC supports our local libraries and bolsters the services that can be offered. The State Library Resource Center provides statewide services, including broadband internet and digital resources, as well as access to millions of items that can be easily obtained by citizens in their home counties. The SLRC conducts training for local library staff and organizes programming for the public, such as homework help and language learning services. It is a highly collaborative system that maximizes return on state and local dollars and allows county library systems to operate most efficiently. SLRC serves Maryland's public, academic, school, and special libraries. Like everyone, and this isn't going to be the first time you've heard this or the last, SLRC has also been hit by the impacts of inflation during these recent years. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the All Items Consumer Price Index has in fact increased nearly 19% from January 2020 through December 23. My panel can describe in further detail the effects this has had on SRC's ability to provide their resources. This is an extremely well-utilized and economical, cost-effective way to connect all Marylanders with a multitude of valuable services, including workforce and small business training, database access, and interlibrary loan services. Our library system is more important today than it ever has been, and the SLRC is an integral part to our local libraries' operations. Additionally, I'm introducing this bill alongside a small amendment that progresses this critical funding by 1 year. You will see in your floor system, friends and colleagues, dozens of letters of support covering all of your local libraries. So I respectfully request a favorable report on House Bill 489, and I'll turn it over to my panel.
Thank you, Delegate Jones. Committee members, thank you very much. I'm Seth Hirschberger. I'm a resident of Salisbury in Wycomico County, and I'm also the director of the library that serves that county. Maryland libraries have been very strong across the state, including in places like Wycomico County, because of agencies like the State Library Resource Center. The written testimony that I submitted focused on a couple of areas that I have seen the impact for the people of Wycomico County and Salisbury in particular. And those areas are staff training. We're able to provide the essential necessary training for our library staff members. And in a typical year, about half of those are facilitated by SLRC. And that's training that we would need to provide. And because Wycomico doesn't have a large budget for that, SLRC makes it possible for us to provide that training. In addition, Maryland libraries provide amazing access to library resources across the state and across the country through a program called Interlibrary Loan that the State Library Resource Center manages. This makes it possible for us to provide any request, no matter how rare or obscure the item might be. We can say to our patrons, yes, we can get that for you. And then with support of State Library Resource Center, that item is delivered to their local branch where they can pick it up. Keep Maryland public libraries strong by keeping the State Library Resource Center strong. Thank you very much. And I yield back.
Good afternoon, Chair Atterbury, Vice Chair Wilkins, and committee members. My name is Skip Auld. I'm the CEO for Anne Arundel County Public Library System. I am testifying in support of House Bill 489. I've submitted written testimony, but I want to spend my time highlighting how the State Library Resource Center helps us to better serve the residents of our county. The State Library Resource Center is the beating heart of library services and programs throughout Maryland. It's also the central library of Enoch Pratt Free Library, sometimes called the Cathedral Street Library. And by the way, if you haven't visited since it reopened in 2019 following its amazing and historic renovation, you must visit this treasure of our state. State Library Resource Center helps all of us in the 190 branch libraries in every community in Maryland to provide high-quality educational databases, interlibrary loan services. For us in Anne Arundel, it allows us to have a secondary internet connection that would cost us more than $37,000 a year. Because of the State Library Resource Center in fiscal 23, our customers logged nearly 10,000 sessions with the foreign language learning tool Mango Languages, 26,000 downloads of genealogy records using Heritage Quest, 1,600 sessions with Gale Test Prep, studying for AP exams, the SAT, and GED, 26,000 searches for homework help. And our customers also borrowed over 65,000 items from libraries across the country due to the interlibrary loan program. It's truly a cost saver, a vital part of providing impactful library service, and I urge you to support this bill. It would minimally increase funding from FY 25 through 31, and it is the best investment you could make in the future of our state. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair and other members of the House Ways and Means Committee. My name is Dr. Michelle Farmer, and I'm a board member of the Enoch Pratt Free Library. I'm here to speak in support of House Bill 489, or funding support for the State Library Resource Center. Just to amplify some of the comments that were made, this service we affectionately call SLRC, for State Library Resource Center, the popularity is going up significantly. Over 100% increase in request of documents. We have over 4 million items in our collection, and there are more, and they're available to all citizens, all residents of the state of Maryland. When I think about the high school students who are looking for that special document for a report, a job seeker that's looking for some additional information or guidance, someone like myself who wants to learn a new language and it's for personal enrichment, so many of these services can be available through the State Library Resource Center. It's there and it ensures that all Marylanders can benefit from this. We encourage passage of this important legislation to ensure the State Library Resource Center's future impact in Maryland. The future lies in your hands, and we hope you will support this bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Atterbury, Vice Chair Wilkins, and thank you to Delegate Jones for your continued support in public libraries. My name is Liz Sunderman-Zinger. I'm the Chief of the State Library Resource Center. And as my colleagues from across the state have said, and as you will see again in your ample written testimony from all public libraries in the state, from K-12 and others, we provide a lot of access to a lot of people around the state. We provide high-speed internet access to public libraries and to 25 municipalities and other agencies. We have a 99.9% uptime, which I defy you to find any other corporate Wi-Fi system that is providing 99.98% uptime. We provide the interlibrary loan services. To spell that out again, that means that if there's a customer in Allegheny County who wants a book anywhere in the state, they can have it delivered to their local branch in Allegheny County within 2 business days. We provide that support through software, and we provide that support through a delivery service. So we have vehicles and drivers that are continually driving around the state, making sure that everyone has access to the materials they need in a timely fashion. We also broker with people outside of the state. So we have software that allows anyone in the state to borrow books from anywhere. So if the same customer in Allegheny County wants a book that's only held by the University of Toronto, we have the software that facilitates that transaction, and they're able to get that book in a timely fashion as well. But that software, everything, the prices just keep going up. So we're going to put out an RFP that year. The software contract is up. We expect the lowest bid to come in at least 30% over what we're currently paying. The databases are going up. We expect the Gale databases, those are 3-year contracts. We expect that to go up 40% this year when we renegotiate. The cost of the drivers is going up, the cost of the insurance. It's a good investment for the state. Please support us. Thank you.
Thank you. And I believe we have one person virtual. Elizabeth Hewlett.
Yes. Hello, Chairman Atterbury.
What, we can't see you.
Oh, let's see. There we go. Okay, let's start again. Hello, Chairman Atterbury, Vice Chair Wilkins, and distinguished committee members. My name is Elizabeth Hewlett, and I am the director of the Western Maryland Regional Library. I can't express to you enough the positive impact that the State Library Resource Center has on the rural libraries in Maryland, and particularly those here in Western Maryland, the smallest and poorest region in the state. With their support, the citizens of Western Maryland have access to a solid core collection of online resources, professional development opportunities, and access to a world-class interlibrary loan system, which opens the might of public library collections statewide to even the most remote communities in Garrett and Allegheny counties. Just this past year, the State Library Resource Center took on a significant amount of the cost of the regional's interlibrary loan delivery system. This freed up much needed funds for my local libraries, while at the same time significantly improved the efficiency of the whole system. The passage of HB 489 will ensure that the State Library Resource Center can continue its important work as a cornerstone institution for all Maryland libraries. You have my written testimony, which further describes the importance of the State Library Resource Center and the passage of this bill. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Questions, Delegate Young.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just quick 2 questions. The first question is looking at the amount of money that's being requested per year. I see where previous years it was 4 cents, 4 cents, 4 cents, 4 cents, and then it's like flat for the current budget, and then it's 9 cents, 8 cents, 10 cents, 10 cents, 10 cents, 9 cents, 9 cents, 9 cents, 10 cents. Can you just explain to me why we go from 4 to 9? And I understand why it continues to increase. It's on par with what we've been doing, but why we're going kind of to that roughly 9 to 10 cent early.
Yeah, the 4 cents is not enough, is the simple version. The rate that the costs are increasing is going up exponentially. So whereas before the cost of ebooks, the cost of the consortium, all of those things would maybe go up 5 or 10% every time we would renegotiate. Now those numbers are 20, 30, 40%. So we can't control the costs of our vendors, and we have to meet these needs, because if we don't, then only the richest library systems in the state will be able to afford them, and there won't be access in the smaller counties because the counties also cannot incur these costs. They don't have the money for it. So it's not a lot of money. Like right now we're funded at $12.1 million a year. So a 5% increase is only like $600,000 or $700,000. So we're not asking for millions and millions of dollars at a time. We just need enough so that we can keep providing the service at the level we currently have it at.
So this is a maintenance of service.
It's just complete maintenance of service and staff. COLAs happen, and the vendors keep jacking up the prices.
So to my second, so that goes that goes to my second question, right? As we look at new technologies, like the library is where I first really spent a ton of time on a computer. We didn't have one. You go to the library on the way home, and it was like the hangout, to be honest with you. But that's where I also like was on the web, like for the first time in a significant way in middle school. So I'm thinking about these new technologies and thinking about how the library has always been a catalyst, at least in my experience, to expose young people to those technologies. So, I just want to make sure that as we increase the funding, that it also provides the opportunity for you all to do that expansion and that exposure that you did, that I've experienced. So I just want to make sure that this amount would allow for those type of opportunities.
Speaking honestly, this is covering our basic needs. We do provide all of those revolutionary experiences. We certainly provide computer and internet access, job search help, all of that. But it is through generous grants from the federal government, the state government, and private donors that we're able to provide things like virtual reality headsets and helping people learn about artificial intelligence and emerging technologies. This does not cover that, but we are able to supplement. If we can cover the bases, we can go out and get the money.
Appreciate your hard work. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Madam Delegate. Thank you, members.
Any further questions? Okay, seeing none, thank you very much. That concludes the hearing on House Bill 489, Delegate Jones, House Bill 522.
Oh, wait a minute.
Thank you so much, everyone. For the record, I am Delegate Dana Jones, Chair Atterbury, Vice Chair Wilkins, and members of the Ways and Means Committee. I come before you today to reintroduce in the same form a bill that passed out of your committee and out of the House floor last session. This bill H522 would simply require county boards of education to establish a policy to accommodate public middle and high school students who need to access telehealth services during the school day. It just requires a space with no construction requirement be provided inside the schools for these appointments. Telehealth services play an important role in expanding care to address the increasing need. And for so many middle and high school students, it is the most efficient and effective way to receive care. Access to telehealth services can help increase school attendance, school safety, and learning outcomes. However, students seeking telehealth appointments often need to take these appointments during the school day. At present, some school districts are preventing this from taking place, as outlined in testimony provided by the Children's National Hospital. According to a recent technical report by the American Academy of Pediatrics, school-based telehealth programs have shown to increase opportunities for both acute and chronic care for children and adolescents, reducing pediatrician and pediatric provider travel, and it also provides an early means of evaluation, intervention for acutely ill patients, as well as addresses developmental, behavioral, and educational issues. Nationwide, we have been experiencing an increase in mental health issues. Although this has been felt population-wide, our youth have been particularly hit hard. According to the Center for Disease Control, in the 10 years leading up to the pandemic, feelings of persistent sadness and hopelessness, as well as suicidal thoughts and behaviors, increased about 40% among young people. As emphasized by the American Psychological Association, the pandemic has exacerbated these issues for many children. These impacts are particularly devastating to our LGBTQ+ youth and communities of color. A 2023 national survey on LGBTQ youth by the Trevor Project revealed that 41% of respondents seriously considered attempting suicide in the prior year. According to a 2023 analysis from the CDC, the suicide rate of Black individuals between 10 and 24 years old saw the largest proportional increase in suicide rate, rising nearly 37% between 2018 to 2021. Currently, in most jurisdictions, if a student needs to take a telehealth appointment during the school day, they must have a parent drive to school, take them out, sign out, miss school time, and miss seat hours. This dynamic presents a multitude of issues, but most importantly, equity. A significant portion of students do not have parents who can afford to take off work to sign them out of school, this is creating unbelievable barriers for students and ultimately prevents children from accessing the care that they need, especially our marginalized population. Additionally, when a child is signed out of school, as I mentioned, for a telehealth care, it is often advised that the appointments take place in the car with their parents. This creates a privacy issue for all students. Without equitable access to health services, our youth are disproportionately negatively impacted. I was particularly excited recently to listen to the testimony on telehealth provided to this committee on January 24th by BCPS Superintendent Rogers and Calvert County Superintendent Navarro. In Calvert County, Dr. Navarro has seen the importance of mental health services to combat bullying and school safety. In Baltimore County, the school system recently rolled out a telehealth pilot in 5 middle schools and countywide telehealth services for high schoolers where they can access services directly on their smartphones. As Dr. Rogers explained, we know sometimes students need to talk to someone. It's not always convenient hours, and there are provider shortages. So far, with hundreds of high schoolers signed up to access services, BCPS has found it helpful, and they are excited to see what this will mean for students in the long run. I'm going to turn things over. I believe we have also folks on virtual, yeah. But I really thank the committee for passing this out last year. I'm happy to be here with you again, and I ask for a favorable report for HB 522.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, Vice Chair, and committee members. My name is Mitzi Fishman, testifying on behalf of the Board of Nursing, and we are in support of House Bill 522. House Bill 522 aims to ensure student access to telehealth appointments within the school setting. It mandates that each county board of education establish policies to accommodate student telehealth appointments during the school day and designate a private space for student patients to attend their appointments. We believe it's important to support our student patients by increasing their access to care through telehealth. By allowing students to attend their appointments while in school, school absenteeism would be minimized and continuous learning would be supported with minimal disruption. Telehealth in schools also promotes equitable access to care by helping families that don't have the time or capacity to take off from work to ensure their child attends their appointment. This would also help to alleviate the burden of travel costs for the parent or guardian. And then lastly, the board believes that telehealth in schools would overall support the continuity of patient care and promote the health, well-being, and privacy of our student patients. And with that, thank you for your time. We hope for a favorable report.
Thank you. So is Christine Crone here? She's not here. She was in favor. Okay, we have virtually Jaden Ferris and Councilwoman Lukey. So Jaden, go ahead.
Hello, 1 second. Oops, starting my. Hello again. This is my 3rd time. For Jaden Ferris, Glisson, Maryland. We're the statewide chapter of Glisson National. We support House Bill 522, which would require county school boards to develop policies for student access to telehealth appointments during a school day and requiring a private space for those appointments. As the leading organization centered on creating and sustaining inclusive K-12 education for LGBTQ+ students in the state of Maryland, we believe this legislation is crucial in ensuring every student has healthcare access. As a result of specifically mental health care, as a result of societal stigma, bullying, and harassment, LGBTQ+ youth are at greater risk than their peers for mental health problems. The Trevor Project reports that 68% of LGBTQ youth report dealing with anxiety, 53% report being depressed, and alarmingly, 41% have seriously considered suicide in the last year. Yet, the Trevor Project also finds that most LGBTQ+ students do not have adequate access to mental health care. Similarly, the CDC finds health disparities between LGBTQ+ youth and their cisgender peers and heterosexual peers. The CDC recommends that schools serve as important facilitators of general health care access for youth, noting that such actions improve the health of LGBTQ+ students. Glisson, Maryland believes that expanding telehealth access for youth in Maryland schools will help address the gaps in access to care. Improving such access is critical in alleviating health disparities and ensuring that all children in Maryland public schools are ready to learn during the school day. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilwoman Lukey.
Sorry.
sorry about that. Hi, Madam Chair and Madam Vice Chair. It's great to be able to testify today. I want to thank the sponsors for bringing this bill back this year. And while it passed out of the House with flying colors last year, it did not have that journey in the Senate. So I am appreciative that Senator Kagan has cross-filed the bill in the Senate this year. It's no secret that the foundation of a positive school environment involves a lot of collaboration and cooperation between parents and students, their teachers and administrators. This measure, while it is small, it doesn't require a heavy lift in any way. It simply requires adoption of a policy, has a significant impact on those students and families and on the teachers who are trying to teach these children. It's not a secret that there are substantial needs for mental and behavioral health care, as well as other somatic care that can't be dealt with effectively without children missing school. So for example, a child who has a chronic illness that ends up having med check appointments, for example, might be able to do a med check appointment via telehealth, which is a quick, like 10-minute on and off kind of thing. And their parent can join from their place of work without missing work, without interrupting the child's school day, and making sure we're doing the best to keep students healthy, both mentally and physically, and in the classroom. I know that earlier in this session, this committee heard from State Superintendent Dr. Carey Wright about chronic absenteeism. And I want to note that chronic absenteeism includes excused absences. It is not the same as truancy. And so when you have schools in a school district, for example, in Montgomery County Public Schools, we have a significant number of the schools within the county that have over a third of their high school students as chronically absent. One school in my district has nearly half of its students as chronically absent. Again, that includes excused absences for illness. So this is a small measure and an equity issue, and I urge the committee's favorable report.
Thank you very much, Councilwoman. Good to see you. And we do have a couple of questions. Well, I'm going to ask, if the sponsor doesn't mind, John Willems is a favorable with an amendment before we do questions. So if you would like to come up, Mr. Willems, and then we'll do some questions. We do have one unfavorable. Is Laura Bogley here? Okay, so we'll do Mr. Willems, and then we'll do questions.
Chair Atterbury, members of the committee, John Willems representing the Maryland Association of Boards of Education. Really wanted to testify this year to distinguish from last year's position in opposition to this bill to supporting with amendments. Our written testimony does request that MSDE and the Maryland Department of Health engage in the professional stakeholder process of establishing state student health guidelines, which this committee is relatively familiar with relative to issues like diabetes and seizure disorders, sickle cell, and other student health issues where school systems rely on the expertise of the Maryland Department of Health, our school nurses, Johns Hopkins, American Academy of Pediatrics, and the like to develop those guidelines. It's not to say that this bill couldn't pass first and those guidelines be developed, but we do feel that it's a chicken and egg issue where the guidelines would help provide the grounding for the development of this services. And then we just raise the issues and concerns about there are some different kinds of telehealth. So the kinds of programs, the Talkspace program in Baltimore County, for instance, those are unscheduled or scheduled appointments. This bill relates more to a structured telehealth service where the school system would be expected to coordinate with the students and the provider's schedule and then provide space in the school for those scheduled appointments. And so it's a little different than the phone accessible talk to a therapist when you need to kinds of services, which are incredibly valuable, but would not necessarily require the space or accommodations provided in this bill. Thank you.
Okay, now we'll move on to questions. Delegate Ebersol.
It's a pretty simple yes or no question. House Bill 878 of 2023. Is it in the same form as the third reader version that we passed in the House of Delegates? Thank you.
Delegate Fair.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for bringing the bill forward. I think as we've talked offline on this is such a critical need. And as somebody who runs a center that allows a drop-in option for people to come and have their telehealth appointments in private spaces, I cannot tell you the demand, the incredible demand that these services are needed throughout our community, and utilizing our school system is such a smart use of our resources. A little bit of the testimony that we were reading through and a little bit of the conversations that I was having with folks expressed anxiety around liability. We kept hearing about that last year, and I think I've heard that a couple of times this year. Can you clarify for us when a person is a licensed certified social worker or an LCSW, LMSW, and they hold telehealth appointments, do they have insurance? And so when we talk about issues around liability, really the liability comes down between the telehealth client and the telehealth provider. Is that correct?
Correct.
Wonderful. And do you sense that there's any opportunity for that, the school system simply providing a space for there to be any kind of misconstruing of that telehealth appointment as if I was having it anywhere else in the public, that they could be held liable? Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. And thank you for your vote last year as well.
Thank you very much.
Delegate Miller. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Delegate. So questions, one, what, were you brought up schools not wanting to do this or something along those lines? Do you have a sense of why?
No, these were parents who came to me upset that their children needed a telehealth appointment. They were able to take it. They had a free period in class. It could have been a 10-minute check-in, much like Councilwoman Lukey alluded to, and school just said no.
Just like wouldn't
sign
let them
out,
out of
sign
class?
out, sit in your parents' vehicle was one of the mothers said, and that's to assume that you have that's a real equity issue when we're thinking about it. To tell your parent to take off work, drive over, sit in the parking lot, sit in their car. Also, let's, as I mentioned in my testimony, let's think about privacy. Potentially, that patient doesn't want to have that with an audience.
Do you think the school system was thinking about privacy? Was that their concern, that they might have not have had the space because we've got, I mean, we're putting a lot of demands on the spaces in our schools. Do they not have a space for that to happen where they could ensure compliance with privacy?
That was never brought up to me.
Okay, I mean, that might be a question, for the school systems if we require them of this. Is there anything that's preventing a local school system from doing this now if they wanted to have their own telehealth policy to be able to do that? Okay, and then you did mention the role of parents, which of course, speaks to me, and I definitely understand parents setting up the telehealth. How do you see the role of the parents in the whole situation?
In the state of Maryland, we actually took the age of consent down to 12. So middle and high schoolers can have telehealth appointments for behavioral and mental health on their own now.
Oh, yes, only for therapy, correct. And how is that billed to the parents' insurance? Is that billed to the parents' insurance, or these would just be?
No, it depends on the provider. It depends on, I think of several different scenarios. So I could get back to you and we could speak.
Because that was causing me a lot of issues last year in subcommittee is figuring out how that would work, because, and I mean, I just want to, every mental health professional that I've talked to, when they're treating, they actually have to a lot of times treat the whole family, or making sure the parents are on board in certain situations. Even
making sure they're on board for what? For a high schooler to receive an appointment?
Not on board for the appointment, but as far as like promoting the mental health and helping their child best, a lot of times the mental health counselors or any kind of psychologist, things like that, a best practice is to involve the whole family. That's usually
depending on who asks for the appointment, right? Because then we're getting into HIPAA. We're getting into whether the student, if there's a 16-year-old who requests an appointment, they can't just call a parent to ask.
Yes, they can. Maryland law isn't going to supersede that. Not in a HIPAA thing. If I call about my 16-year-old to the doctor, yes, there are certain circumstances as far as if my daughter were pregnant, something along there are certain circumstances, yes, where that applies. But I don't know. That's another thing that we would need to find out, because I'm not sure the answer of that piece if you're calling about mental health. I don't know.
Okay.
So that,
Thank
do
you
you
for
know?
sharing.
Do you know? I mean, do you know the answer to that? Is that I can't call up if my 16-year-old is getting any kind of treatment, medication. I don't have access to that?
Yeah, I'm not sure about that. Let's get back to you on that.
Perfect. Okay, we'll pin that one. Okay. And then when you're having these telehealth type appointments, I guess it's the whole thing. We'll talk offline about the whole thing about how who's setting it up and all that kind of stuff. I don't want to run through that now. And we did hash through some of that. But I do appreciate the intent and what you're trying to do as far as having that opportunity for parents. I had a telehealth appointment over in the House building in the restrooms.
Okay,
There.
and
So
I hope it went well for you,
know,
delegate.
yeah.
And I didn't know
Because
that you
we're
had
on
it.
the floor. We were voting and I came off the floor. So I absolutely understand the need and I understand the intent. I just have a couple concerns, especially as far as privacy, kids and parents. So
Well, thank you for
very
sharing with
much.
all of us.
Are there any further questions? Okay. Seeing none, that concludes the testimony on House Bill 522. And calling our final bill of the day. Thank you all who have waited this long for this hearing. We appreciate it. Delegate Solomon, and you can bring up whomever you'd like. Delegate Young is sitting in here like, I thought I left judiciary. We actually just started like later, so it seems like. Huh?
I think they'll call you up. I was just gonna say, yeah, the questioning is still going on in the first bill in judiciary. Thank you, everybody, for sticking around. And thank you, first off, to the committee for your support. And actually, this bill was literally unanimous out of the committee last year. For the record, Delegate Jared Solomon of Montgomery County, really pleased to be here.
Do you know? I mean, do you know the answer to that? Is that I can't call up.
Okay, one moment. If you are with us virtually, please turn off your live stream. And then we'll just pull you in to testify when necessary. Thank you.
A lot of people excited about the Ways and Means hearings. So really excited to be here to present House Bill 416, which is around changing the requirements and procedures for active shooter safety drills and trainings. As I mentioned, you all passed this bill unanimously out of the committee. We passed it unanimously out of the House last year. The bill has been presented again in the same form. So really appreciate the thoughtful work of your subcommittee, of this full committee in getting this bill into a really good posture. And again, I don't think the Senate had any sort of opposition to this. You know, they just kind of we didn't have a crossfire last year and it got kind of behind some other bills. So actually this year as well, we have the vice chair of the committee, Senator Kagan, is my crossfile, and the chair of the committee, Senator Feldman, has co-sponsored it. So fingers crossed, we won't run into the same issues in the Senate, although we can always say that about everything. Just real quick, I'll kind of give you why we brought the bill, what the bill does, and then pass it over to the two folks who are with me today. So we're in a world, obviously, where we really wish we didn't have to. I started my career as a high school teacher in Baltimore City, where we didn't have to do these type of drills, but unfortunately, they're a part of life, and unfortunately, almost every facet of life, not only in education, where we worship, where we shop. And so when we do these drills, particularly in schools, we know that they have a really detrimental effect often on the well-being and mental health of young people. And that's actually how I came to introduce this bill, and just hearing from a lot of the students and families that I talked to. There's some stats in my testimony, but 42% see 42% of students in schools that do these see an increase in rates of stress and anxiety, 23% increase in health problems associated with that anxiety, and a 22% increase in concern over kids dying or kids feeling like they are going to die in school, in students as young as 5 years old. We had a situation in a school in my district where they did a drill, nobody knew about it. Students were literally texting their families, I may never see you again. I know some folks on this committee shared some of their own personal experiences last year. So that's what brought the bill. And just like when we do a fire drill, we don't actually light the building on fire. We mimic what would happen. That's basically the premise here, right? That we can do these drills in a way that does not, in many ways, traumatize and harm our students more than they were before the drill, but still keeps it to a place where we are having an adult, and an age-appropriate conversation with both our adults in the building, but also, more importantly, our students. And so, there's sort of 8 key pieces of the bill. I'm not going to go through all of them, but just a couple of things that I did want to highlight. First and foremost, it would require advanced notification. And again, this committee did a lot of really great work in making sure that we didn't run into safety concerns with that notification, but some sort of advanced notification so that folks know it's a drill. And then there has to be notification to family members afterwards as well. Because again, we heard some stories where, the way that you find out that something happened in a building is because your child comes home and says, we pretended we were dead today, as opposed to having a family member be able to sit down and say, I know this happened in your building. Let's talk about, the reality of the situation. Let's talk about how this might cause you some anxiety. And again, it's bringing families into the process. The drills have to be age appropriate and with trauma-informed care, because we know, again, this could re-traumatize particularly students who have experienced gun violence in other facets beyond just the school building. There has to be a research component to this, some surveys, and we've worked really closely with the Maryland Center on School Safety, which fully supports the bill, has been working with us hand in glove for over the last year. And then the last piece here, which again, I know you all took really deliberative approach on, and I was just so grateful for it, is making sure that at least annually, a school system has to send home information on safe gun storage. And that's, I think, so critical, especially with the work that we as a General Assembly did last year in passing Jalen's law, making sure that families know. I think the stat is something like 80% of school shootings happen with a gun that came from the home. So that information is written in concert between the Center on School Safety and the state police, so that they are making sure that best practices in our laws are conveyed. There's a ton of testimony in your floor system from parents and students all across the state. Bill's in the same posture. We didn't want to overwhelm you, so we just brought a couple of witnesses to give you a little bit more context. And again, thank you for your work on this bill last year, and would ask for a favorable report.
Good evening. Good evening, Chairwoman Atterbury, Vice Chair Wilkins, and members of the committee. Thank you all for still being here this evening. This is also my first time, and I've learned a great deal over the last 3.5 hours or so. Thank you. Thank you. All right. So my name is Linda V. Rice, and I'm actually here on behalf of Melissa Ladd, who is our campaign lead for the Maryland chapter of Moms Demand Action. She unfortunately had to leave, but I am here to present what would have been her testimony. Melissa Ladd is a gun violence prevention volunteer, as am I. I am here as she would have been in support of House Bill 416, and we ask for a favorable report out of this committee. There is no evidence showing that active shooter drills prevent school shootings or do anything to protect school communities during an active shooter situation. Instead, we should be doing all that we can to prevent people, including students, from accessing firearms. Also, studies show that active shooter drills have a negative impact on the mental health of students. Melissa is a middle school teacher, and at the beginning of each year, she goes through all the drill scenarios with her students, including talking about what to do in the case of an active shooter. They do not do a simulation or an active drill, but even just talking about the possibility creates enormous anxiety for the students. One of her students came up to her in tears after the discussion to ask her if we could please just not discuss it again. These children have been subjected to a lifetime of constant fear and threat of school shootings and are left to bear the emotional brunt since adults have not solved the problems of guns in schools. Just as Delegate Solomon's pointed out, the bill also importantly requires school districts to remind their families about the responsibility to lock up firearms. More than 80% of school shooters gain access to the weapons used in the shooting in their own homes or the home of a friend or family members. It's only common sense that we support this bill. And so we ask her for a favorable report, and I thank you for going over. I apologize rather for going over time. Thank you. Thank you. And it's not even my testimony, so thank you.
Benevolent chair.
Yes, indeed.
Good afternoon, Chairwoman Atterbury, Vice Chair Wilkins, and members of the committee. My name is Navian Scarlett. I live in Frederick, Maryland, in District 3. I am a gun violence prevention volunteer, a college student, and I am a gun violence survivor of a shooting at Frederick High School in February of 2015. I'm here in support of HB 416, the active shooter drill notification bill, and I ask for a favorable report. I wholeheartedly believe in this bill because it will help students cope with anxiety and trauma shooting drills can induce. While the safety of students and staff is paramount, I do not believe that inducing anxiety or even triggering gun violence survivors is an ideal approach. In my experience during the first active shooter drill at my high school, I had the same fear and anxiety from the night of my school shooting experience. When there are other stimuli included, such as the rattling of a door handle, I remember holding hands with my friends as tears of anguish rolled down my cheeks. As I looked around my classroom, students were crying from fear and anxiety, some having panic attacks, and others curled up on the floor, knees to their chest, rocking back and forth. As a result, for me and my classmates, there was no assistance to quell our distress. This bill will inform students and parents in advance, prevent triggering simulation sounds during these drills, and offer services for students to recover from mental strain of reliving their gun violence trauma. We do not need to compromise the mental health and well-being of students and staff to protect them. This legislation is the most reasonable way to keep everyone safe and prepared for what can no longer be considered the unexpected, but a matter of time. We must put gun violence survivors and those traumatized first to ensure that we are not the cause of plummeting mental health in the community by ensuring their safety on all fronts. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. And we have some other folks signed up to testify, but are there questions for anyone here right now? Yep, Delegate Buckle.
Delegate Solomon, I think you said this, but I just want to make clear. The bill was exactly the same as last year. Everybody on the committee voted for it. Everybody on the floor of the House of Delegates voted for it.
Yes.
Didn't change a word, not a
Nope.
comma. Thank you.
I will say there are two amendments that were proposed by witness or by folks who had submitted testimony. One is from the Department of Health to make sure that that the advanced prep work and some of the best practices that the Center on School Safety does are done in ways that folks with limited English proficiency can access it. I feel like that's a standard our entire state government should have. And I will defer to you all on how you want to handle the Department of Health, but they did submit that. This bill is the exact same form, passed unanimously. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. You two lovely ladies can step back if you like. I imagine some of these people might be gone, but I will call. And then there are some people virtually. Ariel Juberg, Karis Gill, Piper Lagoe, Woody Kessel, Ken Schilling, Aspen Egan, and Lauren Lamb. And then we'll do virtual. Yep, if you want to begin, go right ahead.
Good evening, Chair Atterbury, Vice Chair Wilkins, and members of the committee. My name is Ariel Juberg, and I am representing Marylanders to Prevent Gun Violence. Our executive director has submitted testimony as well. We urge a favorable report on House Bill 416. As you have heard, there is growing evidence that active shooter safety drills are implemented in ways that cause harm, even without a shooting occurring. Studies on the mental health of the students, teachers, and parents who experience drills demonstrate increases in anxiety, stress, and depression. Even more troubling, these fears and anxieties may have lifelong impacts on the generations coming up in this system. Many of us in the room, myself included, did not have active shooter safety drills in school. We may not be able to truly understand the experiences of young people today. Even incidents that don't make the evening news can cause tremendous stress. My sister-in-law is a middle school teacher. Last year, a student brought a loaded gun to her school. After the quick thinking of a fellow teacher, the student surrendered the weapon without harming anyone. Still, the event left everyone shaking their heads and wondering, what if? Those fears can be re-triggered by drills that are not conducted with care. House Bill 416 provides a framework to offset some negative impacts of active shooter drills. It ensures that drills are carried out in the least damaging way possible and that evaluators are in place to assess and adjust. Marylanders to Prevent Gun Violence will continue to advocate for local and state actions so that every child is safe from gun violence, both at home and at school. Until that day arrives, we urge a favorable report on House Bill 416. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Atterbury, Vice Chair Wilkins, and members of the committee. I know it is late, so I will be brief, and you have my written testimony as well. My name is Lauren Lamb. I'm a former high school teacher, and I'm here on behalf of the Maryland State Education Association and our nearly 75,000 educator members across the state in support of House Bill 416. As an educator, I have seen firsthand how active shooter drills can cause deep distress for students and educators, and especially for students who may have past traumatic experiences related to gun violence. We, of course, want every child to feel safe going to school and to be prepared both in and out of school. But we know that unannounced and gratuitously realistic drills are not creating preparedness, they are creating anxiety and trauma. Thankfully, this bill would ensure that those types of drills don't happen in Maryland schools and provide additional data on best practices so that we know what will help our students. We also want to draw attention to the prevention measures in this bill, the requirement to ensure that families are informed of firearm safety laws and best practices. It's just a common sense measure that could prevent a tragedy. So we would urge you to issue a favorable report on House Bill 416. Thank you.
Hello, delegates. I am Ken Schilling from the Unitarian Universalist Legislative Ministry. As a religious leader, I have worked with teens for over 3 decades. Personally, I know that grieving people need timely support, and people that experience trauma also need timely support, and trauma and grieving need 2 different types of support. Recently, I felt the anxiety and panic of a mother. What bill will save her? What bill will save her? Her daughter works in a school system and a child had threatened to shoot her. And she kept on saying, mother kept on saying, what bill will save her? So I support the model content requirement in this bill to publicize the secure storage of firearms. That's one thing we can do. And I also feel the fear of teens. And so I've summarized some of the concerns that I've heard recently. Consider the emotional toll of students from disrupting the learning environment. The lack of clear communications during an event creates anxiety. We need plans for safety while in an auditorium. What is the absurdity of being told to jump out of a 3rd-story window? We need to show concerns for survivors of gun violence. We need to comfort students after an event. It has to be timely. We need an explanation if it's a real threat. We have a sacred duty to provide for the mental health and well-being of our students. I urge you to vote for 416.
Good afternoon. My name is Aspen Egan, and I am a junior at Oxon Hill High School in Prince George's County, Maryland. And I urge you to submit a favorable report for HB 416 because I believe that our current active shooter protocols are ineffective. For those of you who've never experienced an active shooter drill, a typical drill goes as follows. First, we receive word that the school will go in lockdown. Sometimes they tell us if it's real, most of the time they don't, and our only indication is the reactions of the teachers. Next, the teacher locks the doors to the classrooms. They put a piece of paper over the window on the door, they close the blinds, and we either hide in a corner or we sit at our desks and we wait. I've been in lockdown drills and real lockdowns since I started school in kindergarten. And throughout all of them, I've always thought one thing. If this was serious, we'd be dead. We are literally playing rock, paper, scissors with our lives, and the only thing we have ever put up is paper. If someone had made it into the school with the intention of killing children, do you think a piece of paper is going to stop them? What does cowering in a corner achieve besides making it easier to target us all at once? In each and every lockdown that we encounter, we turn our students into sitting ducks waiting to be gunned down. Any person with more than 3 brain cells can realize that a school probably isn't empty just because it can't see the kids. And if they make it in, we have no defense. And that's why a lot of kids I know don't take these drills seriously. People talk during lockdown drills, and I have had teachers scream during lockdown drills. I have sat through lockdown drills with police outside of our school for over an hour doing homework. Because when we get to the point in which our actions will have any effect on whether or not they know we're there, we're already dead. There is nothing anybody else could do because our existence is not dictated by anything we do. It's dictated by their ability to aim their gun. And yeah, I'm going to do my homework and I'm going to talk to my friends because why not? If I make it out, then I don't have homework. If they can hear me, then I'm already dead. I've never been in a lockdown where a shooter made it into the school, and all of my lockdowns have been in the Harmon Day area. And that's the only reason I can be here today. Not because the protocols worked, but because the shooter didn't want me dead. I don't know what the best protocols would be, and I can't guarantee that there is a better one, but I know that we should at least try to find out, because this isn't some protocol to determine who wins a tie, and this can't be done halfway. Children's lives are at stake, and they need to be protected.
Guess we have to move closer to each other. Good evening. Strange to say good evening, having been here all day, but good evening, Chair Atterbury and Vice Chair Wilkins, and certainly distinguished members of this committee. You know, in particular, I want to thank you for your attention at this late hour to a critical issue, school safety. What could be more important than protecting the safety of our children so that they can learn well? My name is Woody Kessel. I'm a professor of pediatrics and public health and a co-director of the newly launched University of Maryland Progress Initiative to prevent gun violence, along with my co-director, Joe Richardson. I'm also here on behalf of the Critical Issues Forum, a coalition of synagogues in our county. And we particularly want to not only support the bill, but thank Chair Atterbury and Delegate Solomon for being incredible champions for children. I sat here all day. There wasn't an issue that didn't resonate with me as a pediatrician in trying to deal with every issue related to schools and support our children. Responding to the need for our children to learn in a safe and secure environment is what this legislation is all about. The requirements, as Delegate Solomon articulated them, contribute to this, to ensure the safety that are developmentally appropriate and age appropriate. Chronological age is not the same as developmental age. We need to be very thoughtful that when we talk about K through 12, a kindergartner does not have the same issues, needs, awareness as a high school individual. And I'm joined with 67,000 other colleagues from the American Academy of Pediatrics endorsing preparedness, readiness, but in a safe, developmentally appropriate fashion. This is also consistent with efforts at the national level. And one of the key features of this bill, and thank you for your indulgence to let me go on for a moment or two, is to collect data. We need science to help direct our decision making. Who's affected? How are they affected? What the intensity of the drills are. Not every safety drill is the same, nor should it be, frankly, the same. The other one is securing safe storage as an important communication. You know, we just saw yesterday that in Michigan, a mom was indicted for contributing to the tragedy that happened to her son. Accountability is a critical element in all of this effort across the continuum. You know, almost 200 years ago, when we first noted the first report of a school shooting, it was remarked that maybe it's the rights of the children that need to supersede the rights of carrying a weapon. So we thank you. And frankly, I have to say, as a Marylander, I'm proud of what Maryland has done in passing legislation to protect children and to protect all of us from the untoward consequence of
Thank you.
gun violence. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have some folks that are here virtually to testify. Kimberly Buckheit. Hi, 2 minutes, please.
Hi, good evening, Chair Atterbury, Vice Chair Wilkins, and committee members. I'm Kim Buckheit speaking on behalf of the Maryland Center for School Safety. Thank you for the opportunity to offer testimony in support of HB 416 and expand upon our written testimony. The goal of emergency trainings, drills, and exercises is to prepare professionals, students, and parents to take the necessary steps to ensure safety and save lives. These efforts are an essential part of emergency preparedness. A coordinated emergency response requires each individual to carry out their specific duties and responsibilities. The training, drills, and exercises that occur to prepare each group of individuals should vary. HB 416 does not preclude first responders from continuing to train separately using tactical training and realistic exercise scenarios. First responder training happens separate from the training and drills that students, parents, and school personnel engage in to learn and rehearse the steps they would take in the event of an active shooter. MCSS staff remain available to answer questions related to drills, training, and school-based emergency preparedness. Thank you, and MCSS respectfully requests that the committee give HB 416 a favorable report.
Thank you. Beth Jarrett, please.
Good evening, Chairman Attlebury and committee members. My name is Beth Jarrett. I've lived in Maryland all of my life. I currently live in Lutherville and I've lived here for 9.5 years. I'm a mother of 3 Baltimore County Public School students. And today I'm speaking in support of House Bill 416 on behalf of the Free State PTA. Research from Everytown Gun Safety concludes that there's almost no evidence confirming the value of active shooter drills for protecting people when shootings occur. Research does suggest, however, that active shooter drills are associated with increased rates of depression, stress and anxiety, and overall physiological health problems for students. These harmful effects have been found in children as young as 5 years old, up to high school students, parents, and teachers. And as the mother of 3, I can attest to this from experience. Perhaps the most important part of the bill for me personally is the requirement that schools send home information on Maryland's firearm storage laws. In the US, firearms are the leading cause of death for children. 4.6 million children in the US live in a household with at least one loaded and unlocked gun. The Social Secret Service has found that 3/4 of school shooters got their firearm from the home of a parent or close relative. Preventing access to guns is one of the keys to reducing gun violence. Last week at my 7-year-old's basketball game, I struck up a conversation with another parent, a dad of 2 kids, 7 and 5 years old. He told me he's a cardiologist and his kids go to a private school in Towson. When we started talking about gun storage, he looked me in the eye and said, "Oh, so keeping my gun in a shoebox in my closet isn't good enough?" Parents need to be informed. Parents need to be educated on the importance of secure gun storage. Let's get them the materials they need to understand the proper way to store their guns to keep children safe and without access to guns. The Free PTA urges this committee to issue a favorable report on HB 416.
Thank you. Nicole Hollywood, please.
I'm sorry, I'm not able to start my video. It's still disabled.
Okay. go ahead. We've seen you a few times already.
Exactly. I think we're good. So greetings. My name is Nicole Hollywood. I'm a professor in the University System of Maryland, a resident of the Eastern Shore, and a parent, and I'm submitting this testimony in support of HB 416. Parents, students, educators, and medical professionals have raised many concerns about the impact that active shooter drills can have on student development, including the risk for depression and anxiety and the risk for lasting symptoms. The American Psychiatric Association, the National Education Association, and the American Federation of Teachers have all declared active shooter drills were detrimental and unproven safety tactics. Accordingly, schools must be mindful of the impact of active shooter drills that they have on students and take that into consideration when designing such programs and determining when to even include students. For states and districts that have a mandate to conduct active shooter drills, the American Psychiatric Association, the NEA, and the FT recommend avoiding drills that are simulating actual incidents, notifying parents, students, and teachers in advance of planned drills, creating age and development appropriate content in conjunction with teachers and school-based mental health specialists, and combining drills with support systems to address student well-being. HB 416 will help to remediate the trauma of active shooter drills by requiring advance notification of the drills, preventing realistic simulations, and providing adequate support services before and after drills in alignment with recognized best practices. The bill would also require the development and distribution to parents and guardians of life-saving information on Maryland's safe storage of firearms laws. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And last, Laura Mitchell, please.
Yeah, my video has not been turned on either. I'm being prohibited by your system.
Okay, go ahead.
Now it's popped up. There we
Oh,
go.
there you go.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair Atterbury, Vice Chair Wilkins, for hearing this today and for considering this bill, as well as the committee members. You have my written testimony, and I do support this bill with one small amendment, and that is where we urge collaboration with law enforcement. I would also like to see that collaboration with a mental health professional in planning these drills and making sure that we are doing them in a way that is mitigating or minimizing any trauma, as well as including those services afterwards and being prepared for that to mitigate any trauma that a child did experience. I am Laura Mitchell. I'm the mother of 2 adult children, and one of whom is neurodivergent, has significant trauma history, as does my granddaughter, who's now in 11th grade. She experienced a tornado warning while I was at the school in 4th grade, and I saw the angst and anxiety that created in her. It took her weeks to get her to sleep again. When she was early in 6th grade, I happened to be at the school again when they did an active shooter drill. It was unannounced drill. It was not stated to be a drill. They had to lock down in the library or the media center and be quiet. And I could see that angst building in her. I saw the same behaviors, covering her ears, rocking back and forth, really getting very anxious, being in a fetal position. By the time the drill was over, she was unable to control herself. Being still and sitting quietly on her best day is a challenge. When it was over, they simply said, the drill is over, everyone can return to their normal activities. She was not able to return to her normal activities for weeks. In fact, she ended up in the hospital within 2 weeks with suicidal ideation because she couldn't stop thinking about it. She could not stop thinking that someone was coming to her school to kill her. She's now in 11th grade. It's 5 years later, and she still has those fears. I urge you to pass this with a favorable, give a favorable report on this, and to pass this bill. It is much needed. She has significant trauma, as do many others. At that point, she wasn't even diagnosed with autism. So I also have concerns about those that we don't know their trauma history. We don't know, have a diagnosis for them, but having a mental health practitioner involved in that planning can help identify students and staff that may need extra help.
Thank you, Ms. Mitchell, and thank you for waiting that long. Are there any questions from anyone? Okay, thank you. I want to particularly thank the young lady who's in high school for coming and sharing your experience with us. So thank you very much. And that concludes our final hearing and testimony on House Bill 416. Thank you, everyone. See you tomorrow.
Good job.